Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Clara Harris. Betrayal is one of the most emotionally devastating experiences a person can face, especially when it comes from someone they love. It can shatter relationships, destroy families, and even lead to loss of life. David Lynn Harris worked tirelessly for many years to become a respected orthodontist. His wife, Clara, also found success in the dental field as a well-known dentist. Both of them dedicated themselves to their studies and careers, allowing them to achieve their dreams. Together, the Harris family enjoyed a prosperous life filled with luxury and beautiful, including children, something many people aspire to. David's journey began in Texas after graduating from high school. He enrolled in medical school with the ambition of becoming a doctor. He devoted all his free time to his studies, often declining invitations to social events and parties. After completing his degree, David chose to focus on dentistry and aimed to start his own practice. His career quickly took off. After he finished his education, David was known for his charisma and his ability to connect with patients, helping to calm them during their visits. Over time, he gained a strong reputation in the city. Clara Suarez was born in Colombia as the eldest of 4 children. Her family, while not wealthy, placed a high value on education and hard work. Teaching Clara the importance of striving for success, she was attractive and participated in beauty contests, even winning one. Clara studied dentistry at a prestigious university in Colombia, but she always dreamed of moving to the USA. She fulfilled this dream when she turned 20. By the mid-1980s, she had arrived in the States and enrolled in college. Clara moved to Texas with the intention of staying only temporarily, but she eventually chose to make it her home. After finishing her studies, she began to pursue her career, with the goal of entering private practice from the beginning. However, she faced challenges due to her lack of experience at that time. When she met David, they discovered they had many shared interests, making it feel as though they were destined to be together. David mentored her, initially in her role as a nurse, and later, as he expanded his private practice. Clara trained to become an orthodontist. Both were ambitious, attractive, and driven, and their families often expressed how fortunate they were to have found one another. Just a year after their meeting, David and Clara decided to marry. They got married on Valentine's Day in 1992, which held special significance for them before meeting Clara. David had been divorced and had a daughter named Lindsay who lived with him. They worked on building their relationship, spending plenty of time together due to their common interests. From that period on, their career successes gained momentum. In the 1990s, their dental clinic grew, requiring more specialists to join their practice. The family business became very profitable, and they worked in a prestigious area near Houston, specifically in a wealthy community called Nassau Bay, where the Harrises lived. They enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle with a dream home and a collection of high-end cars. They had everything they needed for a comfortable life. Clara had always dreamed of having children, but she faced challenges with her reproductive health and struggled to conceive for several years. They sought help at a family planning medical center, which eventually led to Clara becoming pregnant and giving birth to twin boys, whom they named Brian and Bradley. Their marriage appeared to be perfect beneath the surface of happiness. Betrayal was brewing during this time. David was secretly involved with Gail Bridges, a single mother of 3. She captivated David while Clara was on maternity leave, focusing on their family. Before an assistant position opened up at Dr. Harris's clinic to help manage the workload, Gail, who had divorced several years earlier, was seeking work and found a job listing for the Harris Clinic. In 2001, Gail applied for the dental clinic assistant position and attended the interview. Her previous experience made her a strong candidate. David was immediately drawn to her. She was friendly and outgoing. Meanwhile, Clara was dealing with typical post-pregnancy challenges. She was sleep-deprived and struggling with her weight. Her recovery was slow, and David was growing impatient. He felt neglected as Clara was entirely focused on the twins, which he confided in a few friends. In contrast, Gail demonstrated her interest in both the job and in developing a closer relationship with David. Leading them from a professional connection to friendship, David was becoming increasingly attracted to Gail. He kept this hidden from his colleagues, who knew his wife, because he didn't want to stir up any trouble. However, the temptation grew stronger, and by the end of the year, he invited Gail to lunch at a local restaurant, which she accepted. After that meeting, they began a secret relationship. David didn't take many precautions to keep it hidden. He regularly returned to the same restaurant with Gail, where he had previously dined with his wife. The Harrises were familiar faces at the restaurant, so it didn't take long for people to notice the change in his company. About 4 months later, in early July 2002, other employees at the dental center discovered the affair when they caught David and Gail being intimate at work. David asked them not to tell anyone, but it didn't matter. He had been communicating with Gail on his home computer, and a few days later, Clara discovered their conversations and uncovered her husband's infidelity. She chose not to accuse her husband or create a scandal because she wanted to save their marriage. So she felt it was important to communicate openly. She shared with her friends that she felt betrayed, but also recognized that she had some responsibility in the situation. David, busy with the children, seemed willing to repair their relationship, insisting that his involvement with Gail was limited to kisses. The Harrises decided to reboot their family by going on vacation to Jamaica, where they had an honest conversation and agreed to work through their issues together, including ending David's relationship with Gail. Clara also expressed a desire to let go of this new employee. This trip appeared to genuinely strengthen their marriage. David began spending more time with Clara and the children, promised to dismiss Gail once he found a replacement, and even showed Clara job listings for potential hires, despite claiming to his lover that their affair had been discovered. David had been secretly meeting with Gail. He expressed to a few close colleagues that he was struggling to choose between his family and Gail. David loved Gail, but didn't want to jeopardize his marriage. He still cared for his wife and didn't want to disrupt their lives or fight over assets and custody. Most people advised him to return to his family and move on from the affair. Though he considered this advice, he never shared his uncertainties with Clara. Everyone assumed David would manage the situation on his own. On the morning of July 17, 2002, Clara had a simple conversation with her husband, David. She asked him if he loved her, and he hesitated for a moment, which made her suspicious. His hesitation stemmed from his paranoia. He feared she had asked that question because she knew about his affair. This brief pause only heightened her suspicion, leading to a tense moment when Clara demanded an explanation. That evening, David confessed to Clara about his affair, admitting that he couldn't end his relationship with Gail. He had been seeing his mistress 3 times a week. Clara was devastated, and by the next day, she informed Gail about Gail's impending dismissal from their lives. David did not resist this decision. In the following days, Clara called Gail multiple times, accusing her of meddling in their family and ruining their marriage. Despite this, Clara did not want to end her marriage. She asked David what changes she could make to stop him from being attracted to other women. He honestly told her that he felt neglected because she had been focusing solely on their children. The twins were 3 years old, and he hoped that by now, Clara would have moved past the challenges of pregnancy. Additionally, he was unhappy with the changes in her appearance after giving birth. By the end of their dinner at the restaurant, Clara declared that she was willing to make changes to address David's concerns. She wanted to be the ideal wife and mother, so she decided to forgive him and fight for their happiness. In the weeks that followed, Clara made significant changes to her appearance. She adopted a healthy diet, hired a personal trainer, and began going to the gym, tanning salon, and cosmetologist. She styled her hair and did her nails daily, even planning several plastic surgeries. David noticed her efforts and was pleased. He vowed to end his relationship with his mistress, Gail, and mentioned that he would take Gail out to dinner to officially end things. Although he could have called her to break up, David insisted on meeting face to face. Believing that the manner of the breakup was important, they scheduled the meeting for the evening of July 24, 2002. Meanwhile, Clara struggled with trusting her unfaithful husband and decided to hire a private detective to keep tabs on him. She arranged for a week of surveillance, starting 3 days before the dinner with Gail. After the first 2 days, there seemed to be no unusual activity. Gail did not appear at the Harris private clinic after work, and it seemed that David had indeed ended the affair. As he spoke about the separation honestly, the long-awaited evening for the breakup of the love triangle finally arrived. On that day, Clara took David's stepdaughter, Lindsay, shopping. Recently, Clara had been buying a new, brighter wardrobe to catch her husband's attention, constantly adding to it during their shopping trip. Lindsay noticed nothing unusual. Clara had chosen this time intentionally. On their way back from the store, they would pass by the restaurant where her husband was dining with his mistress. Clara intended to see with her own eyes how her rival would be left defeated. To her surprise, after driving around the parking lot several times, Clara couldn't find her husband's car, which made her suspicious. She then went to Gail's house, but neither Gail's nor David's car was there. Frustrated, Clara approached the private detective to find out the truth. The detective confirmed that her husband was not at the restaurant, but he couldn't disclose David's location. He promised to provide photographs and video recordings later. However, he did confirm that David was with his mistress at that moment. In a fit of rage, Clara demanded the exact address. The detective explained that agency rules prohibited him from revealing the real-time whereabouts of the people being followed, as it could lead to unpredictable and potentially dangerous situations fueled by passion and jealousy. Clara insisted and called his boss several times, demanding the exact information for which she had paid. She felt increasingly frustrated. Eventually, she convinced an agency employee to reveal that they had tracked Gail and David to a hotel where they were together. However, the employee refused to share the hotel's name and address. Clara couldn't obtain that information, but she believed she knew her husband well enough to guess where he might be. She thought he would only go to one specific hotel, Nassau Bay Hilton, the same place where they had their wedding reception 10 years ago. When she arrived at the hotel, she immediately realized she was right. Her husband's car was parked outside. David had taken precautions to hide their affair. He paid in cash and booked the room under a false name. Still, it was clear that the two lovers were inside. Clara parked her car and noticed Gail's vehicle next to David's. Furious, she stormed into the hotel, and Lindsay, not wanting to stay in the car, followed her stepmother inside. At the front desk, Clara inquired about a room reserved under David or Gail's name, but neither was listed. Lindsay knew about her father's infidelity and felt anger towards him. She wanted to verify her stepmother's suspicions. Clara was distraught. She sensed something was going on, but couldn't catch them in the act. Trying to calm down, they stayed in the lobby, checked the restrooms, and sat down, unsure how long they would have to wait. Lindsay decided to speed things up. She called her father, telling him that Brian and Brattle had a high fever and asking him to return quickly. He assured her he would be back soon. Their wait didn't last long. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, revealing David and Gail. Walking arm in arm and smiling as they chatted, they headed toward the exit. Clearly planning to go home, Clara and Lindsay were enraged and rushed at Gail. Clara attacked her, ripping her clothes and hitting her face with her hand and handbag. Lindsay yelled that she hated Gail and also tried to strike Gail. Hotel staff intervened, but the women were too caught up in their anger to be separated. Clara continued her assault on her husband's mistress. One of the employees witnessed David grabbing his wife and pushing her aside to protect Gail with his body. This action only fueled his wife's anger, as it made it clear he was not on her side in the conflict. Eventually, David managed to hold his wife back while hotel staff helped Gail reach her car, where she also tried to calm herself. At that moment, Clara experienced a breakdown. She screamed in rage, Venting her anger at David, Lindsay attempted to soothe her, but was also furious. Shocked by her father's betrayal throughout this, David faced harsh criticism from his wife and daughter, wanting to keep the peace until his mistress departed. But both women hurried out and got into Clara's car. Suddenly, Clara looked up and saw David standing next to Gail's car. Speaking to Gail just before she was about to leave, Clara described the moment as though a red veil had come down over her vision. In a fit of fury, she slammed the gas pedal and sped toward her husband's mistress's car, crashing into it and causing it to spin several meters across the parking lot. Lindsay, who was in the car with her, yelled desperately in an attempt to stop her, but Clara seemed completely unaware of her surroundings. She turned the steering wheel with resentful eyes. As if she had no idea what was going on, Clara finally came to a halt, and Lindsay quickly got out of the car. Witnesses reported that she ran to the driver's side and struck Clara in the face. Afterwards, she fell to the ground next to her father and started crying uncontrollably while waiting for the ambulance. She begged her father to breathe. Clutching his bloodied hands, the ambulance arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. The paramedics declared David Harris dead. Clara took advantage of the time before the police arrived and fled the scene. However, she was found and arrested later that same night. She claimed that she did not intend to kill her husband. She was simply overwhelmed with rage and wanted to punish him for being unfaithful. Meanwhile, forensic investigators were already examining the crime scene, and the authorities received unexpected help. A private detective agency, hired by Clara to follow her husband, had been monitoring the entire incident outside the hotel. They recorded the attack from beginning to end, and the footage was given to the police. The videos contradicted Clara's account, showing her driving around the parking lot 3 times, although David was not clearly visible in the footage. It was assumed that she hit him each time. After the first impact, he was left unconscious. The autopsy revealed only one mark of impact on David's body. Leading to a dispute in court, Clara became known as the Mercedes Killer. The story quickly gained popularity, attracting significant public and media attention. News of the incident spread across all channels overnight. The nature of the attack and the scandal surrounding it intrigued viewers, especially since it involved a wealthy couple running a successful business. Additionally, David's 17-year-old daughter became embroiled in the situation. Clara's case went to court in February 2003. The prosecution argued that hiring a private detective was not just a way to learn about her husband, but part of a carefully planned murder. They claimed that out of jealousy, Clara sought revenge. They pointed out that she had enough time to calm down after the argument in the hotel lobby, which meant her later attack was premeditated. She clearly intended to harm him without giving him a chance to escape. Among the evidence was a recording of a phone call where Clara learned that hired detectives had recorded the crime on film. She spoke in a very calm and composed manner, showing no signs of remorse or regret over her husband's death. During this conversation, she did not even refer to what happened as an accident. From the very beginning, Clara referred to it as murder. She spoke coldly about her husband being dead and the circumstances surrounding it, asking questions dryly, apparently just trying to understand how to build a defense strategy in court. Lindsay, David's stepdaughter, testified against Clara in court. Supporting the prosecution's claims, Lindsay stated that she had been in the car the entire time and had screamed and cried, trying to convince Clara to stop. Despite this, Clara was still extremely angry and committed an act of violence. The defense lawyers argued that Clara's actions were the result of an unintentional outburst caused. They presented her as a heartbroken woman who was not fully responsible for her actions due to emotional trauma. Several witnesses testified in her defense, describing her as a dedicated career woman and a loving mother and wife who worked hard to maintain her family's well-being with David. Even after discovering her husband's affair with the secretary, she remained wise and patient, attempting to save their marriage. In the weeks before the crime, Clara worked hard to lose weight, underwent beauty treatments, and prepared for breast augmentation surgery, all for her husband. Despite his infidelity, she acted like a dedicated wife by cooking his favorite meals and becoming more active in their intimate life. Clara described feeling devastated by her husband's betrayal, experiencing anger and distrust. Clara then revised her story based on her lawyer's advice. She now claimed that her intention was to hit Gail's car and that David became an unintended victim when she lost control while accelerating. Clara cried openly in public, displaying deep sorrow. However, despite her emotional display and her attorney's efforts, she was found guilty of second-degree murder. The conviction carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, which angered David's family. Texas law classified her actions as second-degree murder, allowing for this lengthy sentence despite the minimum being just 2 years. The court also imposed a $10 fine to be paid to the victim's family. The lawyers articulated Clara's emotional distress so effectively that some jurors began to doubt her guilt. All those concerned about the process split into two camps. Some believed the sentence was excessively severe, while others argued that the punishment was far too light. This was particularly poignant as the day the verdict was handed down coincided with the 11th anniversary of David and Clara's wedding. All of this only heightened the emotional tension. Clara participated in several interviews where she openly shared her feelings about the traumatic events she had experienced. She felt confused and overwhelmed by the situation. Realizing that she now faced much bigger challenges, Clara recognized that she could have chosen to file for divorce and take everything her husband valued, which would have been a fitting act of revenge. Now, her primary concern was the well-being of her twins, and David's 17-year-old stepdaughter. Custody of the children was granted to Clara's close friends, who facilitated visits between the children and their mother in prison after serving 15 years. Clara was granted parole and released on May 11, 2018. Following her release, she appeared on various talk shows, displaying a cheerful demeanor at 60 years old. She was eager to begin a new chapter in her life. While in prison, Clara devoted her time to translating books into Braille for visually impaired individuals. After her release, she spoke candidly about her experiences and the struggles she faced in coping with the aftermath of her actions. Some speculated that her reflective statements were merely a means of gaining publicity, considering how soon they came after her release. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Marco Marialini. Marco Marialini was born on April 13, 1959, in the town of Brescia, Italy. His father worked as a builder, and his mother, Maria Lini, was a housewife. She was obsessed with cleanliness and constantly tidied the house. Everything had to be in its place, and any mess could cause her to have a nervous breakdown. Marco had an older sister who was 2 years older. After Marco was born, his mother felt overwhelmed and struggled to keep the house clean. She suffered from emotional distress and may have suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, although she did not recognize her condition and never sought medical help. A month after Marco's birth, he was placed in the care of his paternal grandparents, where he lived for 2 years. His parents eventually brought him back home, believing their situation had improved and that they could handle the challenges of parenting. Once back home, Maria attempted to care for Marco, but he was very active and often caused trouble. He didn't listen to her and frequently threw tantrums. Frustrated, Maria sometimes lost her temper with him. Although Marco's father tried to step in during these conflicts, Maria dismissed his attempts. He is a calm and gentle man who always avoids conflicts with his wife to keep the peace. In the family of Marie, a serious incident occurred. Maria was trying to calm Marco, who was throwing another tantrum for no apparent reason and wouldn't stop. In a moment of frustration, she grabbed him and accidentally threw him out of an open window. Marco fell several floors and miraculously caught on the clotheslines located below, which saved his life. As Marco grew older, he gained weight. He didn't go on diets or actively try to lose weight, but he felt uncomfortable in his larger body. During his teenage years, he began to compare himself to his friends and felt disgusted by any girl who weighed more than he did. Additionally, Marco wanted his girlfriend to have a strong sex drive, equal to his own. However, finding someone who met these criteria was challenging. Most of the girls he met were either too heavy or not up to his standards. Because of this, Marco had a hard time finding a partner until he was 19, when he met Lucia. Marco and Lucia met in 1978. Lucia was short and weighed 100 pounds, and Marco fell in love with her petite figure and sought a close relationship. However, when Lucia first undressed in front of Marco, he was disappointed in her figure. Despite this, Marco continued to date her because he appreciated her calm, modest, and composed demeanor. Meanwhile, he continued to search for his ideal partner. A few months after starting their relationship, Marco joined the army and was stationed in Pisa, Italy. Believing that he would quickly find new love elsewhere, he stopped contacting Lucia. After a few months, when Lucia started dating someone new, Marco realized that he didn't want to lose her. He contacted her again and even proposed. Marco admitted that he decided to marry Lucia because he thought he could change her to fit his preferences. They got married in 1980, and soon after, Marco focused on controlling Lucia's weight. He believed that 45 kilograms was too heavy for a woman, so Lucia agreed to go on a diet. Marco restricted her food intake and weighed her regularly. When she lost weight, he praised her and expressed his love. However, if she gained weight, he became extremely harsh. After a few months, Lucia reached a dangerously low weight of 33 kilograms, which made Marco happy. Then, unexpectedly, Lucia became pregnant despite her low weight. Marco accepted this and allowed her to eat freely, he realizing that she shouldn't be restricted during her pregnancy. As Lucia's belly began to grow, Marco became unhappy with it. Their intimacy began to falter. During this time, Marco often fantasized about women who were very thin, like skeletons. He often fantasized about being able to see the woman's spine. As Lucia entered her final months of pregnancy, Marco began dating other women, especially those who were not only thin but also anorexic. However, he soon realized that these women were not right for him. Because they have unpleasant personalities and, most importantly, lack interest in intimacy. They make their own choices about food and eating, which is contrary to Marco's desire to have complete control over his diet. In 1981, Lucia gave birth to a daughter, and a year later, their family welcomed their second child. After giving birth, Lucia gained a significant amount of weight, causing Marco to increasingly distance himself from her. He found her post-pregnancy body unattractive. He eventually decided to divorce her, wanting to ensure that their children would stay with their mother. The divorce was amicable. Marco then began looking for a new partner, a journey that lasted nearly 10 years. During this time, he opened his own antique shop. In 1994, dating through newspaper ads began to become popular. Marco, 35, posted an ad describing who he was looking for. A very thin woman, not anorexic, aged 18 to 50. He received responses from 21 women and invited them on a date. Among them, he was most interested in Monica, who was from Sicily and 5 years younger than him. She was 1.72 meters tall and weighed 45 kilograms. She was friendly and outgoing. Curious about Marco's unusual ad, she decided to respond. Monica and Marco began to see each other regularly. While Monica viewed their relationship as casual, Marco wanted something more serious. He tried to convince her to move in with him. After a while, Monica decided to move in with Marco. In the same year, he started facing challenges at work. He had fallen into debt, and his antique shop was losing money. To help him, Monica lent him 76 million lira, the amount for which she sold the house. This was a large sum, considering that the average salary in Italy at that time was around 2 million lira. Although Marco proposed to Monica, she rejected him. At first, they lived as a normal couple, but after a while, Marco began to interfere with her diet. He said that a 1.72 m tall girl weighing only 33 kilograms was beautiful. But he set her goal weight at 38 kilograms. Monica agreed, Marco still secretly hoping she would reach 33 kilograms. It is unclear why he set that number. Marco limited Monica's meals to once a day, usually consisting of a plate of green salad or vegetables. He monitored the food in their house, marking the cereal jars and making sure Monica did not eat anything without his knowledge. He weighed her several times the day and became angry if he noticed her gaining a significant amount of weight. If her weight increased, he would force her to vomit and sometimes resort to physical violence. On weekends, the couple often eats out. Marco enjoys a hearty meal, ordering an appetizer, a second course, and a dessert. Monica, on the other hand, limits herself to a vegetable salad without dressing or unsweetened green tea. This is her routine, even on holidays. After a few months of dieting, she reached her goal weight, but soon after, her weight started to climb to 40 kilograms. Monica kept her diet a secret from everyone, including her parents and friends. As she began to lose weight, her relatives noticed and began to ask about her health. To avoid their questions, she changed the subject and eventually isolated herself, cutting off all contact with her friends and ignoring their calls. Over time, her health deteriorated. She felt weak, had no motivation to get out of bed, and her period stopped. Monica was constantly hungry and obsessed with food. She resorted to stealing, sneaking small dry crackers that Marco never counted. One day, she even ate a whole raw onion. When the Marco discovered that food was missing, he punished Monica severely. He forced her to have sex, physically abused her, and made her sleep on the floor. After 2 years of enduring this treatment, Monica felt completely drained. She finally made the decision to leave the house. When she told Marco that she wanted to end their relationship and return to her parents, he responded by saying that she would have to kill him for that to happen. He then threatened her with brutal revenge if she attempted to escape. In the spring of 1996, Marco and Monica went to a restaurant. Marco ordered a plate of spaghetti, while Monica chose a green salad and asked for no oil or seasoning. While they were waiting for their food, Marco said he needed to go to the bathroom. After Marco left the table, Monica suddenly took his plate of spaghetti and started eating it ravenously. When Marco returned from the restroom, he became extremely angry at Monica's actions. He snatched the plate from her hands and demanded that she calm down. In response, Monica rushed into the restaurant's kitchen, where the cooks and waitstaff were busy. She grabbed a plate of food and began eating with her hands. Marco found her there and brought her back to their table. He shouted at her and then slapped her hard across the face. The restaurant staff and other customers were puzzled and merely watched the chaotic scene in silence. After returning home, Marco decided to punish Monica. He stripped her and told her to sleep on the floor while he went to the bedroom to sleep comfortably in his warm bed. That night, Monica picked up a heavy hammer and attacked Marco while he was sleeping, hitting him on the head before fleeing the house. Hours later, Marco woke up with a severe headache and saw blood near him. Realizing that Monica was gone, he ran to his neighbor, who called an ambulance. Marco was taken to the hospital. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured and recovered fairly quickly. The police arrested Monica and took her into custody. During the interrogation, Marco defended Monica, acknowledging that he had been cruel to her. Marco said that there had been some misunderstandings in their relationship and that they would work things out. At trial, Monica was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years of house arrest. She then moved to her parents' home in Domodossola, a city in northern Italy, 200 kilometers away from Marco's home. During her house arrest, Monica was still able to use a phone. Although she never contacted Marco, he called her regularly. At first, he seemed concerned, showing concern for her well-being. However, over time, his calls became too frequent. During one conversation, Marco confessed that he could not live without her and wanted to see her again. Monica rejected his advances, but he persisted. In 1997, Marco wrote and published his first book, The Anorexia Hunter. The original cover photo that Marco chose featured a healthy, chubby man holding a skinny woman. He based the characters on the American cartoon Popeye the Sailor. However, due to copyright issues, Marco was unable to use the image, so the publisher released the book with a different cover. Marco has publicly stated that the book is an autobiography that reflects his real life. He expressed that he felt deprived of love and care since he was a child. He has a complicated relationship with his mother. Although he hates her, he sometimes feels affection for her. Marco describes his father as a weak and indecisive man. Marco wrote about his relationship with Lucia. In the book, he called Monica Barbara. He discussed the theme of control and power over girls. According to the story, the author killed Barbara. During the book's launch, Marco publicly declared himself a monster who needed to be stopped. An editorial writer who was present at the event found Marco's tone very offensive. After reading the book, the editorial writer went to the police to express his concerns. However, the police dismissed his report, believing that Barbara's murder was completely fictional. At the time, Marco had no criminal record, making it impossible to charge him based solely on the content of his book. When Marco's autobiography was released, Monica was still under house arrest for another year. Marco sent her a signed copy of his book with the message, "Love and Hate." He continued to call her, and Monica recorded their conversations on a dictaphone. Concerned about his mental health, she urged Marco to see a doctor. During his therapy sessions, Marco opened up about his obsessive thoughts and troubling fantasies, revealing the truth about his life. He was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for several weeks, but after his treatment, he returned home feeling disillusioned with medicine, realizing that the medication had not helped him. In 1998, Monica, who was 29 years old, was finally released from house arrest and allowed to travel around the country. Marco continued to contact her, pleading for a meeting. Although Monica initially refused, she realized that he wouldn't give up easily. Eventually, she agreed to one last meeting with him but specified her conditions. It had to be during the day in a crowded place. On July 14, 1998, Monica met Marco at a small beach in Verbania on the shores of Lake Maggiore, where young couples were swimming and sunbathing. They talked for a while, but then Marco began to pressure her to return to their previous relationship. Monica stood firm in her refusal, and in response, Marco started to threaten her. Monica and Marco were sitting on the shore when she suddenly stood up and ran away. Marco quickly caught up with her and knocked her to the ground. She screamed for help, but he covered her mouth with his hand. Although there were many witnesses, no one intervened. Marco then took out a knife and stabbed Monica 22 times, killing her on the spot. The witnesses called the police, but by the time the ambulance and police arrived, Marco had already swum out to sea. Officers using a lifeboat on the beach caught Marco. During questioning, Marco admitted to his crime, claiming that he had no intention of killing Monica. He said that he came to the beach hoping to convince her to return to the relationship. If she refused, he planned to kidnap her using his car parked nearby. Police found ropes, chains, knives, locks, and duct tape, suggesting a premeditated plan that ultimately failed. Marco denied wanting to run away after the murder. He mentioned that he tried to end his life but failed. During the investigation, comic book drawings were discovered in his home. In these drawings, he depicted himself as a large ball and the girl as a thin line. His artwork expressed mockery towards women. During his conversation with the journalist, Marco showed no remorse for his crime, stating that he felt he had no other option and did what he had to do. However, Marco acknowledged that he posed a danger to society. Marco Mariolini was found to be sane and guilty of murder, he receiving a 30-year prison sentence. While incarcerated, there was a time when he refused to eat, took laxatives, and lost weight down to 44 kilograms, but later he regained it. He was a problematic inmate, starting a fire in his cell and causing minor trouble for the guards. As a result, he was transferred to different prisons multiple times. Marco wrote letters claiming he should not be released because he would kill again, but he later denied this and then wrote similar letters once more. Italian director Matteo Rone was inspired by Marco's horror stories to create the film First Love. Released in 2004. Although it did not receive major awards, it drew attention to Marco's past. In 2021, there was an article written about Marco's early release and it was revealed that he had been transferred to a mental hospital. In late 2002, journalists approached Marco for an interview. During the interview, he expressed a desire to forget his past experiences with women. The journalists noticed that he seemed confused, often unable to answer their questions. His mental state may have been affected by the effects of medication. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Molly Martins Corbett. On February 12, 1976, Jason Corbett was born in Limerick, Ireland. His family was very happy, and he was one of 8 children raised by his parents, Rita and John. Jason had a twin brother named Wayne when his father lost his job. Jason quickly took a part-time job as a security guard at the school sports center. He was eager to earn extra money to support his family. Jason was loved by his family and respected by his friends. He was intelligent and easygoing. Jason met Margaret Fitzpatrick. They later got married and welcomed their first child in September 2004, a son named Jack. 2 years later, they had a daughter. Sarah, Margaret, and Jason lived happily together and raised their children together. However, their happy life took a tragic turn on November 21, 2006, just 3 months after Sarah was born. That night, Margaret woke up and felt an asthma attack begin. Previously, a nebulizer had helped her, but this time, the medication did not work. Jason rushed her to the hospital, but unfortunately, they lost precious time and did not arrive in time. Margaret passed away. Jason was extremely sad after losing his wife. He could not imagine how deep the grief was, especially when he was faced with the challenge of raising 2 young children alone. He felt as if he had lost everything, but he knew that his son and daughter were waiting for him at home. This realization forced him to be strong for them, instead of succumbing to despair. Jason tried to hold on for his children, which gave him the strength to continue. Jason's relatives tried their best to support him, although he appreciated their help. Jason did not want to be a burden to his family. He decided to hire a nanny in 2007. The first woman who came to help was Czech, but they had difficulty communicating, and he had to let her go. He then hired a Spanish woman, but she did not speak English, which Jason had trouble with. In addition, both women were looking for temporary work, and Jason wanted to find someone more stable. He needed a long-term nanny who could be a part of his children's lives and provide reliable support for the family. After careful consideration, Jason concluded that hiring an English-speaking nanny who was looking for permanent employment would be the best solution. In early February 2008, he received an email from Molly Martins Corbett, a 20-year-old woman. She attached a resume that was later found to contain false information. Molly claimed to have graduated from Clemson University. Although she had actually dropped out, she also claimed that she had passed a test and was licensed to be a foster parent, which was also not true. Molly had a tendency to lie frequently and was often caught in the act. However, Jason did not know this and believed that he had found the right person. Molly agreed to move to Ireland to care for Sarah and Jack. She lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and flew to Ireland on March 10, 2008. Things did not start well for Molly when she arrived at customs. She was refused entry because she had only purchased a one-way ticket. This caused complications with immigration because she could not confirm how long she would be staying or provide a special work visa. Eventually, Molly was able to resolve the issues and was allowed to enter the country. Jason asked a good friend of his to pick Molly up at the airport. The friend later said that, when she first met Molly, she felt that the young woman might not be right for Jason. Molly was attractive and dressed very formally, almost as if she were competing for a beauty pageant rather than working. However, Sarah and Jack quickly got used to Molly, and things seemed to go well. Molly looked after the children, and Jason felt very comfortable. Over time, Molly and Jason developed a closer relationship, and Jason began to ask her out on dates. However, it is important to mention Molly's American boyfriend, Keith. They were together for years until Molly decided to work in Ireland. Her ex-boyfriend, Keith, claimed that they had not officially broken up before she moved. He also alleged that Molly had mental health issues and had just been released from a psychiatric hospital, according to Keith. She was not in a position to move to another country and look after children who had lost their mother. Molly had told Keith that she would be staying in Ireland temporarily, which was strange because she had told Jason that she wanted to be a housekeeper for a long time. After 2 weeks in Ireland, Molly informed Keith that she would not be returning. The news devastated him. Keith felt betrayed. It seemed that Molly had made a firm decision to cut Keith out of her life, which hurt him deeply. Jason felt reassured that Molly was getting along with his children and that everything seemed to be going well. The children were growing attached to Molly, and everything seemed fine. However, Tracy, Jason's sister, realized that Molly had some suspicious points. Molly did not want to discuss her past in America, no matter how they asked. She always answered vaguely, as if she was hiding the truth. The couple's relationship progressed quickly, but Jason emailed Molly and asked her to return to house for a while. He expressed in the email that he felt their relationship was moving too fast and admitted that he was not ready for a second marriage. This upset Molly, and she responded with some harsh words. In the end, they decided to stay together, but Jason wanted Molly to find another apartment and a new job. Molly agreed to this, but in the end, she never moved out and continued to live in Jason's house. One day, she expressed that she no longer wanted to live in the house where his ex-wife Margaret used to live. After much persuasion, Jason agreed and sold the house. On Valentine's Day, 2010, he proposed to Molly. He truly loved her, and, most importantly, he was sure that the children loved her too. The couple got engaged, and their life together became lively and joyful. Eventually, Molly said that she missed her homeland and wanted to leave Ireland, suggesting that the family move to the United States. Jason's family then moved to North Carolina, where they bought a house. The wedding took place on June 4, 2011, in Nishi. Molly's father, Thomas Martins, escorted her down the aisle. While Jack and Sarah carried the ring and flowers, the photos taken that day capture the joyful atmosphere. However, there are some important details to consider. Molly claimed to her friends that she and Margaret were friends before Margaret's death. This is not true, as Margaret died in 2006, and Molly did not know Jason or his wife before that. Molly's tendency to spread misinformation is worrying. During the wedding, she also threw a tantrum over the McDonald's food Jason's nephew was eating. The boy had food allergies and could not eat from the communal table. One of the guests noticed this, went to McDonald's, and bought the child some snacks. This angered Molly, who reacted violently and lost her temper several times. Years later, Jason's family still lives in North Carolina, and the kids call Molly Mommy. Molly works part-time as a swim instructor and spends most of her free time at home with the kids. Meanwhile, Jason works long hours as a manager at a packaging plant. The couple has made many new friends, and Jason is well liked for his kindness and friendliness. He is often seen chatting with neighbors or hanging out with friends, although things seem to be going well for them. There are actually some underlying problems in their marriage. One of the biggest problems is that Molly wants to adopt a child, but Jason is against the idea. He refuses his wife's request, not out of anger, but perhaps because he doubts the longevity of their relationship over time. Jason begins to seriously consider divorce and the possibility of moving back to Ireland with his son and daughter. Realizing that their relationship is not healthy, Jason hid the children's passports. Worried that she might take them away, Molly sought legal advice about her parental rights in the event of a divorce. As she was not the biological mother of their children, Molly then deliberately made a recording. On the advice of her lawyer during their argument, the recording was intended to prove that Jason was a bad or even abusive father, which would aid Molly's efforts to gain custody of Sarah and Jack to gather evidence. Molly secretly placed recording devices around the house to record Jason during one of his tantrums. As a result, she was left with audio files that portrayed him in a negative light. During one dinner, Molly deliberately provoked Jason, causing him to lose his temper, while she accused him of ignoring her and refusing to listen. This argument was recorded in front of their children, making Jason appear to be an abusive husband and father. On the morning of August 2, Molly's parents, Thomas and Sharon, traveled to North Carolina to visit family. They arrived late at 8:30 p.m. Just in time for dinner, they planned to give the children the gifts they had prepared the following morning. This was especially meaningful for Jack, who would receive a baseball bat, while Sarah would receive a tennis racket after dinner. Thomas and Sharon went to the guest bedroom in the basement, while Jason and Molly went to the master bedroom on the first floor. The children went to their room on the second floor, according to Molly. Sarah woke her up at 3 a.m. after having a nightmare. Molly then took Sarah to her room and covered her with a blanket. However, when Molly returned, Jason was awake and very angry. Apparently because he had been disturbed in the middle of the night, his anger caused a fight. Shortly after the fight allegedly began, Thomas heard strange noises coming from his daughter Molly's bedroom. Worried, he grabbed a baseball bat and entered the room. When he opened the door, he found Jason holding Molly by the neck. When he recognized Thomas, Jason grabbed Molly by the neck, dragging her into the bathroom. While threatening to kill her, Thomas begged Jason to let her go. But when he realized his pleas were in vain, he charged at Jason and knocked him to the ground after being beaten. Jason continued to strangle Molly. Thomas continued to beat Jason. Jason then released Molly to grab the bat and tried to pull it away. A struggle ensued, and Jason pushed Thomas, causing him to fall to the floor. Jason tried to grab the bat, and at that moment, Molly shouted angrily at Jason not to hurt her father, fearing that Jason might kill her father. Molly picked up a brick from the nightstand and smashed it into Jason's head. Molly and her father took turns attacking Jason until they realized he was dead. Thomas then called the police to report the incident. Thomas told the police that Jason had been fighting with his wife, and Thomas had intervened. Now, Jason was in dire need of help when the police and ambulance arrived at the scene. They found that the incident was much more brutal than self-defense. Jason had many serious injuries on his body. Thomas and Molly claimed that they had killed Jason to ensure that he no longer posed a threat. However, considering the severity of Jason's injuries, it appears that some of them occurred when Jason was no longer a threat. Fortunately, the children were asleep and did not hear the noise. The police removed them from the chaotic scene and placed them in a patrol car. One of the officers reported that when they found Molly, she was crying loudly but had no tears. She was rubbing her neck and said that her neck hurt because Jason had tried to strangle her, aside from a small red mark on her throat. Molly had no other injuries, and neither did Thomas. Although he claimed that they had gotten into a violent fight over a baseball bat, Molly and Thomas were taken to the police station to give formal statements. Molly claimed that she and her father killed Jason in self-defense because he had attacked her. She explained that he had been drinking heavily that day and was angry when he was woken up in the night. Molly could not recall specific details after the initial brick attack, but insisted that everything she and her father did was in self-defense. She also claimed that she had been abused by her husband for years, but kept quiet for fear of losing custody of her children. The investigation found no evidence of physical abuse against Molly during her stay with Jason. Recordings from Molly showed that Jason had a bad temper, but he could not be considered cruel to his wife. Thomas's testimony was consistent with his daughter's. He also noted that Jason had been drunk that night. Thomas also claimed that Jason's first wife had died under suspicious circumstances, which was completely false and insulting. In fact, Jason's first wife had died of an asthma attack, as confirmed by medical experts. When Tracy heard about her brother Jason's death, she quickly flew to the United States to speak to the police. She expressed her belief that Molly may not have been completely truthful in her account, and the police shared her suspicions. Tracy confirmed that her brother had intended to divorce Molly and move back to Ireland with the children. This could have been a motive for the murder. On August 3, the day after Jason's death, an autopsy was performed. Medical experts found that Jason had died from blunt force trauma to the head, including multiple lacerations, abrasions, and bruises, along with severe skull fractures from blunt force trauma. The injuries were so severe that the medical examiner was unable to determine exactly how many times he had been hit, but it was clear that he had been hit at least 12 times. Then a shocking analysis by a toxicologist. Molly claimed that Jason had been drinking all day, but tests showed that his blood alcohol level was very low. What was particularly strange was that traces of antidepressants were found in his system. The medication had been prescribed to Molly just days before Jason's death. Additionally, Jason had recently told his doctor that he was experiencing sudden, unexplained anger, although this has not been confirmed. Jason's family members suspect that Molly may have given him his drugs during this time. The children were placed in temporary care of Molly's brother. However, on August 3, Jack and Sarah were brought in to speak to social workers. It is hoped that the children may provide insight into their parents' dysfunctional marriage. Jack and Sarah revealed that their father was always angry and even hurt Molly. Additionally, Jack revealed important information about a brick on the nightstand in the master bedroom that had not been there before. The police were surprised, but Molly explained that she and the children had planned to paint the brick and place it outside. Apparently, the family had an artistic agenda, and Molly had brought the brick into the house after it had rained. However, one has to wonder why she did not leave it in the hallway or by the door. Instead, it was in the bedroom, right next to the bed, which seemed odd. Shortly thereafter, Molly sought custody of Jack and Sarah, alleging that Tracy had attempted to kidnap the children. This request granted her temporary custody. However, the details of the alleged kidnapping were unclear. A hearing was held to resolve the matter, and custody was eventually awarded to Tracy and her husband. According to Jason's will, the conflict between Molly and Jason's family was extremely tense regarding the handling of Jason's remains. Molly wanted him cremated immediately, while Tracy wanted his body returned to Ireland for burial. Molly eventually agreed to the burial, but only if her sister paid for the entire funeral expenses. Jason's body was then returned to his homeland. Initially, Jason's family was very worried that Thomas and Molly would avoid responsibility, but they were arrested. On December 18, 2015, a grand jury indicted Thomas Martins and Molly Martins on charges of second-degree murder and negligent manslaughter. Neither of them admitted guilt. A joint trial was set for June 2017. Before the trial, Molly gave an interview to a television channel in which she reiterated her claims of Jason's abuse and asserted her innocence in his death. However, at this point, Jack and Sarah changed their original statements. They claimed that their father was not abusive and that they had been coerced into lying. This development further complicated the situation, as no testimony from the children was considered admissible in court, giving neither the prosecution nor the defense an advantage. Both sides presented forensic evidence in court, including crime scene photographs and medical evidence to prove that Jason had been brutally murdered. The prosecution pointed to Jason's $600 life insurance policy and pointed out that he had not formally adopted Molly, suggesting a strong motive for the crime. The defense portrayed Jason as a terrible person and a cruel husband. Molly chose not to speak in her defense, which may have worked in her favor. The trial lasted until August 9, 2017, and after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Molly Martins and Thomas Martins guilty and sentenced them to 20 to 25 years in prison. A week later, Thomas and Molly filed an appeal, arguing that the jury had acted improperly. Specifically, they pointed out that immediately after the trial, a juror had spoken to a member of the press, which they found unacceptable. On December 1, 2017, they filed an appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court, and in early 2021, they were successful. Thomas and Molly were released on $200 bail and left the Davidson County Jail within an hour of each other. Following their release, there was reasonable speculation about a potential settlement. However, the father and daughter maintained their innocence. Their retrial in October 2023, Thomas Martins and Molly Martins entered into a plea agreement for manslaughter after their guilty pleas. Davidson Superior Court Judge David Hall sentenced Molly and Thomas to between 51 and 74 months in prison. They have already served 44 months, and each person will only spend 7 months in prison for good behavior. Jack and Sarah are now young adults. Their aunt, Tracy, and uncle, David, adopted them and moved to Ireland. With Tracy's guidance, Sarah wrote a series of children's books aimed at helping children cope with the loneliness of losing a loved one. Going through their parents' divorce, Jack has become a singer-songwriter and is also a keen rugby player. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Lorenzo Ahmed Gonzalez. Lorenzo Ahmed Gonzalez, born on November 29, 2001, is the second child of Ana Cacho Gonzalez and her husband, Ahmed Ali Gonzalez. Lorenzo was an active and energetic child, and his family noticed his passion for sports from an early age. Without hesitation, his parents enrolled him in a local soccer academy. Through his participation in sports, Lorenzo became more cheerful and outgoing. At that time, the boy's parents lived in Dorado, a city on the northern coast of Puerto Rico. About 20 kilometers west of San Juan, they resided in a popular residential area called Dorado del Mar. Unfortunately, Ahmed and Ana decided to separate, although the divorce was difficult. It seemed reasonable considering their frequent arguments. According to the agreement, their children would live with their mother, despite the circumstances. The children regularly visited their father and sometimes stayed with him from Friday to Monday. In general, things were stable, and everyone was satisfied with the current situation. On March 9, 2010, at around 6 a.m., Ana rushed to a city medical center, carrying her son, Lorenzo. This facility typically provides emergency care for critical situations. When she approached one of the staff members, she explained that her son had fallen out of bed at home and had suffered a serious head injury. However, the extent of Lorenzo's injuries resembled those resulting from a car accident, despite the doctor's best efforts. Lorenzo's condition was critical. His chest was severely deformed, and he had multiple head injuries. It seemed that he was no longer alive. The medical team attempted to resuscitate him, but unfortunately, all their efforts were unsuccessful. Finally, at around 6 a.m., Lorenzo was pronounced dead. doctors at the medical facility tried to question Anna in more detail to understand how the boy had been so severely injured. Anna did not hesitate and share what she knows. What was particularly alarming was that when the doctor carefully examined Lorenzo's body, dried blood was found on his wounds. This indicated that the blood had been outside the child's body for a long time, suggesting that Anna had brought him to the hospital much later than she had reported. Furthermore, the severity and variety of the injuries could not have resulted from a single fall. Some of the injuries on the boy's face appeared to have been caused by a sharp object. There were many questions. Anna did not seem to know the circumstances surrounding her son's death, which was not surprising, however. Her unusually calm demeanor raised suspicions about the situation. This may be why the medical center staff chose to notify the police and report the incident. The doctors informed Anna of their decision. Anna simply said that there was no need for that. She insisted that the doctors not contact the police, which surprised them and made them even more suspicious of her, despite her wishes. The doctors called the police about 10 minutes later. Several patrol cars with police and forensic experts arrived. Their first priority was to conduct a thorough autopsy on Lorenzo's body to determine the cause of death. They also needed to question Anna and her daughters, who had been at home during the incident. Anna recounted the first incident as follows. She said that she was sleeping in her room when she heard her youngest daughter scream. This terrified Anna, although she did not immediately understand what her daughter meant. She eventually went into the nursery, turned on the light, and found her son lying on the floor with blood flowing from his head. This sight left her completely paralyzed with fear. She admitted that she did not know what to do in such a crisis. She then woke her eldest daughter and told her to get Lorenzo's clothes and some other things. They rushed to the medical center. She also mentioned that, on the way to the hospital, she informed both Lorenzo's father, Ahmed, and her own biological parents about the incident. A few hours later, they all spoke to the police, who believed they were dealing with another tragic accident. Normally, inexperienced prosecutors are assigned to such cases in the country to allow young professionals to gain practical experience. However, this case was more complicated than it initially appeared. As a result, there were significant errors in the early stages of the investigation. It seems that these errors continued throughout the investigation, including the alleged flawed examination of the crime scene. When the prosecutors arrived at the scene, they did not collect any DNA or fingerprints, and the idea of searching for a suspect was not even considered. Rome, the expert who examined the scene, identified a bedsheet and a pillow. However, he ignored the mattress, which had a larger blood stain. He later defended his choice by saying that he only focused on objects that could have come into direct contact with Lorenzo's body, since the mattress was covered with a bedsheet. He chose not to examine it further. After this limited investigation, most forensic activities at the scene were halted. As a result, Lorenzo's mother, Anna, and his two sisters were allowed to return home that same day and resume their normal lives. This decision by the police raised many questions. Anna's father returned home to clean up everything to avoid reminding Anna and his nieces of the traumatic incident. He wanted them to feel comfortable in their room without any memory of this tragic loss. He disposed of the mattress in a city dump, claiming that the prosecutor had recommended this action. Moreover, the car Anna was driving belonged to her father and could contain evidence related to the events of that day, since the police had no plans to inspect the car. He could not be blamed for trying to hide any evidence. Lorenzo's family is anxiously awaiting the results of the autopsy to understand the cause of Lorenzo's death after the tragic event. They all claimed to have no involvement in what happened that day. Forensic experts noted that the injuries to Lorenzo's face were not consistent with those that would normally occur from a fall. Even a simple visual examination showed a clear difference. As a result, the case was quickly reclassified as a homicide. Lorenzo may have suffered a brain injury and a broken nose from a direct blow by a blunt object. Experts noted several stab wounds to the boy's face, suggesting that the injuries were inflicted by a knife or another sharp object. They also concluded that the attacker assaulted Lorenzo while he was lying down. In addition, experts determined that Lorenzo had died much earlier than the time indicated by the medical center. Due to the new findings from the autopsy, the police ordered a re-examination of the crime scene. By this time, the house had been cleared of virtually all evidence, including fingerprints and DNA, because of the thorough cleaning. The police could not rely on finding any physical evidence. Among the few notable items discovered was a pipe used to smoke illegal narcotics, which belonged to the boy's mother, Anna. While this did not affect the investigation, it tarnished Anna's reputation. Additionally, a small bag containing various documents that did not belong to any family members was found. Among the items in the bag were a toothbrush and toothpaste, along with papers belonging to a recently released prisoner, Luis Gustavo Rivera Sejo, a mentally ill criminal known as El Manco. The papers indicated that he had just been released, information that was quickly made public. This discovery made Luis the prime suspect. Immediately after the autopsy, Anna expressed her wish for Lorenzo's body to be cremated as soon as possible. However, his father, Ahmed, intervened. When he learned of her intentions, he contacted the police and stated that the boy should be buried in the traditional way instead of being cremated. He believes cremation will prevent any autopsies that might be necessary in the future. Anna's wish to cremate Lorenzo aroused the suspicions of the police, especially since the case was being investigated as a murder. Anna's actions appeared to indicate that she was trying to destroy potential evidence of her involvement. In the end, the police sided with Ahmed, and Lorenzo was buried according to custom, just days after Lorenzo was buried. The investigation took a new turn. Anna was summoned to the Prosecutor General's office for further questioning. Anna appeared with her lawyer, who advised her not to give any testimony. It is unclear whether this was the right advice, as by refusing to testify, Anna became one of the main suspects in Lorenzo's death. It seems that her legal team had their own strategy for handling the case and protecting her. After Anna refused to testify, her lawyers held a large press conference. They stated that their client believed she was innocent and felt insulted by being questioned as a suspect. In addition, her lawyer presented a version of events that had taken place after reviewing the statements from Anna's attorney. The police sought help from experienced colleagues at the FBI. When federal agents joined the investigation, they focused on Luis Gustavo Rivera Sejo. It was clear that his release from prison was a mistake or a failure of the justice system. This conclusion was based largely on information regarding his mental health. 2 weeks after Lorenzo's death, Luis was arrested by the police during the initial interrogation. Luis admitted to stealing a passerby's cell phone. He also mentioned being at a fast food restaurant near Lorenzo's house in the early morning of March 9. These statements reinforced suspicions that he may have been involved in the attack on Lorenzo, making him a suspect. Anna's daughters, who were present at the incident, were then required to give their statements to the police. Anna and her parents, however, strongly objected to this, arguing that it was unnecessary and merely a formality. Everyone understood that the police were unlikely to comply with Anna's wishes, and they continued to interview the girls. The police decided to temporarily separate the children from their family during the initial stages of the investigation to prevent Anna from pressuring her children not to cooperate. At the same time, the police launched a new investigation into a man named Jesus Genaro Camacho. Anna's boyfriend, several others, were also under investigation, including federal immigration agents William Marrero Rivera and Arnaldo Colon. The investigation revealed that these men allegedly visited Anna from the evening of March 8 to the morning of March 9, 2010, the day Lorenzo died. Shortly after the police began investigating these men, there was a small breakthrough in the case. This prompted Anna to cooperate with the police by providing a statement. Anna asserted that she had nothing to hide and did not know anyone who might be involved through her statement. She wanted to convey that she was not protecting anyone. The next day, Anna contacted the federal agents again. This time, she mentioned that she had forgotten to share some important details related to the investigation. She revealed that on the night of March 8 to March 9, she and William were at her home. She also noted that she had consumed alcohol and used illegal substances that day, according to her. The amount of alcohol and illegal substances was minimal and did not impair her ability to understand the situation. She clarified that she was not addicted to these substances and only used them occasionally to relax. This information was not new to the agents, especially since they had discovered both drugs and paraphernalia in Anna's home. However, she still had to undergo toxicology testing to determine the exact levels of these and other drugs in her system. Luis provided his own account of the events during an FBI officer's interrogation. He quickly confessed to his involvement in the crime. He said he entered the house by jumping over the wall, causing him to drop his bag containing documents and personal belongings. He then described the incident and some details surrounding the case. While in the kitchen, Luis grabbed a knife and used it to attack Lorenzo. He claimed that he attacked the boy because he thought Lorenzo had seen him enter the house. Luis admitted that he did not want to leave any witnesses to his actions, which is why he committed such a brutal act against the child. After the attack, he fled, claiming that he had spent the night in an abandoned house. He insisted that he had no intention of harming anyone and was just looking for a place to stay for the night. Believing that Lorenzo's family home appeared empty, his statements were quite contradictory, especially considering his severe mental health issues. After months of investigation, the FBI abruptly withdrew from the case without any results, leaving behind much of their work, including Luis's controversial confession. It is important to note that the local police were reluctant to take advantage of this confession and continued their investigation. There were no arrests or significant developments for the next 2 years, and overall, it seemed that the investigation had stalled. During this time, another lawsuit arose between Anna and her ex-husband Ahmed regarding the custody of their daughters. By this time, the girls had moved through several foster homes and seemed to have adapted to life without the intervention of their biological parents. Ultimately, the court decided to award custody of the girls to Ahmed on the grounds that their mother, Anna, had not taken responsibility for raising her children. This decision deeply affected Anna and further damaged her reputation. Following this sad news, she suffered a nervous breakdown and was involved in a serious traffic accident that left her hospitalized for several days. Anna's condition continued to deteriorate, and her family was very unhappy with the private investigator she had hired. They were so dissatisfied that they filed a complaint to revoke his license. In addition, Anna's family sued the private investigator because he published a book that allegedly discussed the details of Lorenzo's case. According to the private investigator, one of the people present at Anna's house that day struck Lorenzo in the head around 11 p.m. After the attack, they tried to hide the evidence and make it look like an accident. The private investigator even mentioned individuals who were likely involved in the incident, although proving their involvement was nearly impossible. Notably, this man later published a book. Ultimately, Anna's family won the case, resulting in a substantial cash settlement of $500 from the private investigator. Another version of what happened, according to public opinion, is that Anna had intimate acts with 3 men at the same time in the bedroom. Lorenzo allegedly entered the room without permission and witnessed the incident. As an unwitting witness, the child was able to tell his father what he saw. In a moment of anger, possibly fueled by alcohol or drugs, Anna is said to have struck her son on the head. The blow was likely inflicted with an object rather than her hand, and the object was later discarded. However, it is important to note that this is just a theory and has not been confirmed. In late 2012, the Attorney General revealed at a press conference that there was evidence against Ana and her father. Records show that Ana's father met with then Puerto Rico Governor Luis Fortuño regarding the case. During the meeting, Ana's father allegedly handed the governor a mysterious envelope, the contents of which remain unknown. Soon after, a surprising development occurred. Antonio Segardia, a former attorney general and high-ranking official, unexpectedly assumed the role of representing Ana in legal matters, leading her legal team. In conversations with various news agencies, he stated that Ana had become the target of numerous rumors and speculations from both the media and independent sources. He was convinced that Ana was not only uninvolved in Lorenzo's death, but was also a devoted mother to her children. Ana now seems to have lost interest in regaining custody of her daughters, a right she had previously been determined to reclaim. Notably, Ana's daughters seemed to not want to live with her. They even wrote letters expressing their feelings. In one letter, Ana's eldest daughter criticized her, calling her a bad mother. Curiously, many of these letters have somehow become public. In 2014, the Puerto Rican police, after making little progress, asked the FBI to assist in the investigation. The FBI agreed, and upon their arrival, they conducted a new interview with Luis Gustavo Rivera Sejo, who was now in a psychiatric hospital for individuals who had committed crimes, with a psychologist present. He once again shared his version of events, however. This time, his story differed significantly from his previous statements. He claimed that he was at Ana's family home on the day Lorenzo died, but stated that he did not see or interact with the child. FBI agents expected the man to give a different account of events. As changes in testimony are common among people with certain mental health issues, the next person the federal agents were interested in was Ana. She was scheduled to take a polygraph test, but did not show up, claiming that she had more important matters to attend to, including her birthday. Then a strange incident occurred. Ana's police file, which contained various details, including her toxicology results, was stolen from the police department. Initially, a 20-year-old man was charged with burglary. He confessed to breaking into the police department, but claimed that he did not take any documents. After searching his apartment, the police found no evidence of stolen papers, so he was only charged with petty theft. As time passed, the police, frustrated with the ongoing investigation, once again brought Luis to Ana's family home to reenact the events. This time, he only talked about how he entered the house, completely ignoring the deceased Lorenzo. He said he was hungry and wanted a snack. He eventually expressed a desire to stay there overnight, but then changed his mind. Ana's then boyfriend, Jesus Genaro Camacho, insisted that he had been with Ana. He admitted that he had gone to her house to drink and have fun, but claimed that he had left early and had not returned. The police continued to grapple with the question of who had attacked Lorenzo. They were particularly concerned about the motive. As many details remained unclear, Ana was never able to provide a consistent timeline of the events that took place that day. Many of Ana's statements contained too many contradictions to be taken seriously. One theory was that Lorenzo had witnessed something that could have implicated his mother, Ana. However, there was no evidence to support these theories, which meant that the police were unable to prosecute any potential suspects in connection with the crime. In 2015, on the 5th anniversary of Lorenzo's death, the 3 men who had been at Ana's house that day were cleared of all suspicion shortly thereafter. The trial of Luis Gustavo Rivera Sejo began to determine his role in Lorenzo's attack. The main piece of evidence against him was a bag he had left at Ana's family home. However, many questions remained as to why neither the police, who had examined the crime scene on the first day, nor anyone else in the house had noticed the bag before. The police later claimed that they had seen the bag but thought it belonged to a family member. The initial examination of the crime scene was not conducted properly. As the police believed it was an accident, Luis's defense attorney made every effort to keep his client out of jail, presenting the results of a recent psychiatric evaluation that showed the man was schizophrenic. Additionally, because he was missing his left forearm, Luis was incapable of performing certain actions on his own. The discussion focused on Luis's mental health, as well as various errors that were made during the initial investigation. One topic discussed was that a mattress on Lorenzo's bed was overlooked. Despite being involved in some of the mysterious circumstances, Anna stated that she found her son lying on the floor in a pool of blood. If this is true, it raises questions about how the blood came to be on the pillowcases, sheets, and mattress. It seems unlikely that the boy would have been able to get back into bed after the fall, especially given the seriousness of his condition at the time. The prosecution presented its own version of the events that evening. They believe that Luis broke into Anna's family home, assuming it was empty. According to them, he went into the kitchen, drank some water, ate some of the available food, and then left the kitchen. They argued that he had brought a knife for self-defense and, after further exploring the house, discovered that there were other people inside. This prompted him to leave the house. At that point, he accidentally entered the room where Lorenzo and his sister were. He thought Lorenzo had seen him in order to avoid detection. Luis decided to attack Lorenzo before the boy could call for help. He assaulted the boy and then slammed his head into the floor or wall. This testimony was partially supported by forensic experts, who noted that Lorenzo had been hit multiple times with a blunt object. Luis eventually left the house, but accidentally left behind a bag containing his personal belongings. While this theory seems well organized, it was never proven by evidence and is largely speculative. Additionally, the house was so meticulously cleaned that no fingerprints or DNA from Luis were found at the crime scene. In April 2016, the police decided to drop all investigative efforts related to Luis Gustavo Rivera Sejo. This decision was made because they lacked convincing evidence to link him to the attack on Lorenzo. Additionally, local police have ruled out Ana Cacho Gonzalez as a suspect. To this day, Lorenzo's case remains unsolved. Since 2016, police have not uncovered any new evidence or theories about what happened, and Puerto Rican authorities have made no further progress in their investigation. The public largely believes that Lorenzo's mother, Ana, is solely responsible for the tragedy. Most people who have followed the case feel that Luis was used as a scapegoat to protect Ana. Overall, Lorenzo's case has had a significant impact on the country's history, spurring reforms that have changed the way similar cases are investigated. These reforms aim to improve the investigative process and enhance evidence collection. It is important to note that many people are still demanding justice for Lorenzo and want to identify the person responsible for his death. Unfortunately, it seems that in this situation, the only hope lies in a candid confession from the perpetrator. Hello everyone. Today, we will learn about another case. The case of Chelsea Bruck. A party for 1,000 people seems like the perfect place to enjoy the festive atmosphere and have fun. However, horrors sometimes lurk just outside, bringing with them unsolved mysteries and hauntings. Chelsea Bruck was born in 1992 in Trenton, Michigan, USA. Her mother, Leanda, worked at a bank, while her father, Matthew, was a farmer. She is the youngest of 5 children. Chelsea has 3 older sisters, Jennifer, Megan, and Cassandra, and a brother named Nathaniel. She is especially close to Cassandra, who is only 2 years older than she is. But all of her siblings share a close and loving relationship. Chelsea's family exemplified a typical American household. They lived in a small town with a population of about 500 people, where everyone knew each other and crime rates were very low. Growing up on a 65-acre farm established in 1875 by her great-grandfather, Chelsea was raised in a supportive, religious environment with strong moral values. Her family also had been involved in agriculture for 4 generations. Chelsea attended a Christian school, where she spent her free time studying Catholic scriptures. Later, she transferred to Monroe Secondary School, which focused on sports, cheerleading, and football. After finishing her education, Chelsea continued to live on the farm with her parents and her sister, Cassandra. During this time, her older sisters got married and moved out. Chelsea had a passion for cooking and intended to attend culinary school to become a chef to gain experience. She took a job at a nearby restaurant called Olga's Kitchen, where she worked as an administrator and felt very happy in her role. Chelsea was a friendly, sociable, and attractive young woman. She loved to express her individuality, often dyeing her hair bright colors like pink and getting a small anchor tattoo behind her ear. When grown up, she maintained a close relationship with her parents. She didn't have a driver's license and wasn't particularly interested in getting one, as her parents always helped her with transportation. By the time she turned 22, she had worked for 4 years and developed a close circle of friends with whom she regularly connected. Chelsea loved going to parties, and one of her favorites was a rock concert organized by a local musician named Mike on his farm. Over the years, what started as a small gathering grew into a well-known event, attracting around 1,000 people, including attendees from neighboring states. Mike had his own band and also invited other local performers. This year, the concert was themed for Halloween and scheduled for October 25, 2014. In Newport, Michigan, which is about half an hour from Ferndale, Chelsea was excited about this big event and planned to attend with her friends Becky Brinson and Laura Taylor. At the event, Chelsea and her friends planned to dress as Poison Ivy from the Batman universe. Chelsea created the costume herself, using a swimsuit as the base and adding various details. After many nights of hard work, the final result was impressive. She crafted a costume that looked original and was worthy of first place. On Saturday, October 25, 2014, the friends gathered for the party. Laura drove them to the party, and they decided not to go home right after the event. Chelsea, now 22 years old, she intended to spend the night at Laura's place. She packed her things and set out for a fun evening. She plans to arrive at the concert around 10 p.m. However, it was still early, and the event had not yet started. Preparations were still in progress, but already hundreds of guests had gathered. Eager for a large-scale party, everything seemed well organized. There were several food and drink vendors, security guards ensuring safety, and parking appeared secure. The girls, who had attended this event before, could not have imagined that this time it would turn into a nightmare. After parking the car, they walked toward the concert venue. Since Chelsea's costume had no pockets, she had to leave her mobile phone in the car to avoid losing it. Nearly 1,000 people attended the event, many dressed in elaborate costumes. Alcohol was abundant, and some attendees were under the influence of illegal substances. These things created a lively atmosphere. Most of the people were unknown to the girls, who had gathered from different cities, but there were several familiar faces. Penny and her sister Heather. The group had a strong bond, having known each other for many years, even though Penny was 10 years older than Chelsea and had her own children. They all felt the energy of the event and enjoyed it. When the rock concert finally began, everyone reveled in the loud music. Chelsea and her friends quickly immersed themselves in the lively atmosphere. They happily drank and danced with everyone. However, because they were too excited to play, Chelsea and her friends lost each other. The situation was further complicated because all the girls were tipsy and disoriented by the noise and chaos of the party, making it hard for them to keep track of everything. Laura tried to locate her friend but was unsuccessful. Becky and Laura weren't overly concerned because there were many acquaintances at the party. They assumed Chelsea was with someone from her circle and would get a ride home later. Around 1 a.m. on October 26, Laura decided to leave the party and go home, unable to find Chelsea in the crowd. Laura gave Chelsea's personal belongings to Becky and asked permission to leave first. Becky woke up early the next morning. Aware that none of her friends had plans for that Sunday, they all assumed they would sleep off the effects of the night before. She tried to call Chelsea's mother to inform her that she had Chelsea's things but couldn't get through. She went about her day, and later in the evening, Chelsea's sister, Cassandra, messaged her to say that Chelsea still hadn't come home. Becky responded that she was spending the night at Laura's place. Everyone felt relieved, thinking Chelsea was safe. But when Chelsea still hadn't returned by Monday, it raised concern. Chelsea's relatives reached out to Laura, but they hadn't heard from Chelsea either. They began contacting all their friends who had attended, and find that none of them had seen Chelsea since they lost track of each other that night. Chelsea hadn't communicated with anyone and don't post anything on social media, which heightened her family's concern. In a state of panic, they went to the Monroe County Police Station to report Chelsea missing. Initially, the police were reluctant to take the case because Chelsea was an adult, 22 years old, who had the right to make her own decisions, including leaving without informing her family. However, her relatives insisted that a search for Chelsea be initiated. Her mother feared that something terrible had happened to her. Immediately after that, detectives began looking into the circumstances surrounding Chelsea's disappearance and defined a search area between Newport and her family farm. As the search efforts continued, detectives sought the assistance of Mike, a rock performer and party organizer, and brought him in for questioning. He agreed to come to the police station to provide his account. Mike was not well acquainted with Chelsea and claimed he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. He did not arouse any suspicion, so he was allowed to go home. The detectives then spoke with the security guards who were present at the event. They stated that they hadn't noticed anything unusual. However, Chelsea's relatives suspected that Mike knew more than he was letting on, so they went directly to his house in search of information about their daughter. They intrusively entered his property, where the party had taken place, and began searching for clues themselves when tensions escalated quickly. Mike permitted law enforcement to enter his area, wanting to avoid any implication of wrongdoing despite the organized search. The authorities found nothing relevant to the investigation. There were no leads. The detectives continued to interview attendees of the Halloween party, but it proved challenging to gather information, as it was a costume event where everyone wore masks and consumed alcohol. These were young people eager to make a name for themselves as a result of their conversations with the party guests. The detectives received hundreds of conflicting statements. Many of these claims were difficult to verify and took a considerable amount of time to investigate. Most of the information turned out to be false, likely due to confusion among people. However, some individuals seemed to purposely exaggerate their stories to gain attention. Some of the statements are completely absurd. One partygoer claimed that a girl could have been kidnapped for slavery, while another suggested that a satanic ritual was taking place. With the possibility of someone being burned alive, the case quickly gained widespread attention. Information, rumors, and falsehoods spread rapidly among local residents. The media was filled with alarming headlines, including wild speculations about victims of satanic rituals. This situation deeply affected the family of Chelsea and Mike, despite the outrageous nature of some claims. The police had to investigate all theories presented by the guests. They discovered that there had indeed been a fire near the stage, reaching heights of 15 to 20 meters. After examining the area, they confirmed that no human remains were found. Ruling out the possibility of ritual murder, the search lasted several days and involved many volunteers, but no evidence was discovered. The friends of Chelsea felt responsible for her disappearance since they had left her alone that night and hadn't begun searching for her earlier. They kept a close eye on her social media accounts, hoping to find clues about Chelsea's whereabouts since she was alone. Her boyfriend was not considered the main suspect, however. The police interviewed all the young men who had any connection to Chelsea in recent years, searched their cars, and collected DNA samples from those individuals. During this time, rock singer Mike allowed a command center for the search operation to be set up on his farm and supported the police in every way he could. He even provided a generator so the search team could have electricity. A tent camp was established for volunteers and those concerned about Chelsea's disappearance, including her family and friends. The search for Chelsea continued almost around the clock. But there was little progress. Despite the warm welcome and extensive help Mike provided to the investigation. Detectives remained suspicious of him. This was mainly due to his reluctance to communicate, which led them to believe he was hiding something. However, it was understandable why he felt this way, given the intrusive nature of the police presence on his property. Ultimately, all of Mike's belongings were searched, but nothing incriminating was found. The police suspect him of involvement in the incident because, before, when the police arrived, Mike was tackled to the ground, and they even threatened to shoot his dog. The reason for this incident was that when the police arrived, they found Mike covered in blood. It was later revealed that he had gotten dirty while rescuing his dog, which had fallen into a trap and was badly injured. He had carried the animal out of the woods in his arms. Mike was primarily at fault for hosting a party without ensuring the safety of his guests. As a result, he faced criticism from Chelsea's family and the police. Detectives learned from Gavin Hewlett, who provided new details to the investigators. He mentioned that a girl in the poison ivy costume was also looking for her friends after she had gone missing. She approached other party guests, asking about Laura, but no one offered to help. Distressed, she started to cry, and Gavin offered her his cell phone around 1 a.m. Unfortunately, she was unable to reach anyone and only managed to borrow a small amount of money. Chelsea felt very sad about losing her friends and being left alone. She declined his offer for a ride. Witnesses from the party reported that Chelsea arrived at the parking lot but felt stranded. Her belongings, including her phone, were left in the car, leaving her unable to contact anyone or find her friends. Consequently, around 2:45 a.m., Chelsea walked onto the gravel road leading from the parking lot, hoping to find someone she knew for a ride home. Although several people offered her assistance, she chose to decline their help and continued walking alone. This was the last time anyone saw her alive. Many attendees recorded videos and took photos at the party. The police gathered all available materials from the partygoers and are now analyzing thousands of images and videos. Some witnesses mentioned a man selling t-shirts that night. They were searching for him not as a suspect, but as a potential witness who might have seen Chelsea. When officers located the t-shirt seller, he reported that he indeed saw a girl in a bright poison ivy costume. Making her hard to miss, he gave to provide the police with some helpful information that a man wearing a sweatshirt and hoodie approached Chelsea, and they engaged in conversation around 3 a.m. She left with him. Their interaction seemed friendly, and they did not hug or flirt. This man was captured on multiple security cameras in the area. Using these recordings and the account of the t-shirt vendor, a forensic artist created a sketch of the man who may have been the last person to see Chelsea alive. This sketch was released to the media, along with a reward for any information that could assist in solving the case. The reward fund gradually increased from $5,000 to $30,000. Leaflets were widely distributed, and Monroe County was filled with photographs of Chelsea by that time. Approximately 300 leaflets had been handed out. Every community had posters featuring her photo, and the leaflets were even included with pizza deliveries. The police station began receiving calls from local residents with tips. Many leads were reported. Data was analyzed, and around 1,000 interviews were conducted. But none of this resulted in significant progress. A breakthrough in the case occurred in 2015, just before the new year, when a woman named Cree Carr contacted the police department. She reported that her boyfriend had confessed to killing Chelsea. Cree had confronted her boyfriend, who threatened her with a knife, and during this confrontation, he revealed that it was the same knife he used to kill the girl in the poison ivy costume. She managed to escape from him as he intended to chase her and her child. When knowing about the high-profile case of Chelsea's disappearance, Cree wanted to assist in the investigation. The police were suspecting that the caller might be seeking revenge. As similar cases had occurred in the past, however, they could not completely disregard her call, so they decided to investigate during their inquiries. They discovered that the report was false. Cree, up being one of 2 people arrested by the police, Evidence showed that she was indeed a former acquaintance of Chelsea. The second individual detained was Harlan, a 19-year-old who claimed he intervened in a situation where two men were harassing Chelsea. He said attempting to rescue her before she was pulled into the fields. Later, Harlan confessed that his story was fabricated. And then, the police received another call on March 22, 2015. A woman was cleaning her yard after winter when she found a red leather shoe without thinking. She discarded it in a garbage bag. Later that evening, her husband noticed the shoe and inquired about it. She explained how she found it while cleaning. He suggested that the shoe might be linked to Chelsea's disappearance, as she had been last seen wearing red shoes. Their home was located 7 kilometers from the party. Police had previously searched this area multiple times, and the couple was shocked that the searchers had overlooked the distinctive red shoe. Confused by the situation, she contacted the police to report her discovery. When officers arrived, they examined the area and the shoe. They confirmed that it closely resembled one belonging to the missing Chelsea. However, they found nothing else nearby. It turned out that this area had not been thoroughly searched before. The searchers were pressed for time and could not conduct a proper investigation before winter set in, and the snow later covered any potential evidence. As a result, the search was essentially ineffective. Soon after, another significant find was made. On the 15th, Eric Kassap was collecting scrap metal with friends when he stumbled upon a red wig while sorting through some debris near the railroad tracks. This wig was identical to one Chelsea had worn on the night she disappeared. Initially, Eric did not contact the police. Although he was aware of the missing girl, he had not paid attention to her accessory. A week later, he saw another news report about the search for Chelsea wearing the same outfit and realized that his discovery might be more important than he had first thought. He began to suspect it could indeed be linked to her disappearance. Despite his initial hesitation, he did not report the discovery to the police right away because he was worried that his DNA might be on the costume. He eventually told his sister about the costume, and she insisted that he inform the police. A week later, Eric reported the items he had found to the sheriff's department. The police went to the location he specified and discovered a carnival costume and Chelsea's wig. As a result, Eric became the main suspect. He shared all the necessary information with the police, including his DNA samples, and maintained that he had never met Chelsea. The investigators pressed him for details, but he continued to deny any involvement. Eric agreed to take a polygraph test and passed it successfully. Meanwhile, forensic experts examined the outfit. They found that the straps had been torn off, indicating that someone had forcibly removed them from the girl, and the leggings were completely ripped. A forensic analysis of the poison ivy suit revealed brown stains that resembled blood. Further testing confirmed that the stains were indeed blood and belonged to Chelsea. By that time, over 1 million flyers had been distributed, but there was still no significant progress in the case. On April 24, 2015, John Markin was preparing his 5-hectare plot, which was densely forested, for construction. This location was close to where Chelsea's clothes had been discovered and not far from the site of a nearby rock concert. During the construction work, a bulldozer became stuck in a muddy area. When the driver got out to investigate, he observed what looked like a human skeleton. He alerted the other workers, who confirmed it was indeed a badly decomposed human body without a face. Construction was immediately halted, and the frightened workers contacted the police. The driver informed the dispatchers that he had found human remains. John suspected it might be Chelsea, who was the focus of an extensive search in the vicinity. A piece of the remain clothing had been found, and the remain had light hair. When police to arrive at the scene, where they discovered a remain hidden in the underbrush and covered with branches and leaves. Right away, they were sent for forensic examination, and dental records were used to identify the body as that of Chelsea. The forensic expert concluded that Chelsea suffered a brutal death. Her murder was particularly cruel. Her jaw was severely disfigured, literally broken in two, and the bones around her eyes and nose were crushed. Many of her teeth were also knocked out. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury from a strong blow with a blunt object. Additionally, evidence indicated that she had been abused before her death. DNA from the perpetrator was found on Chelsea's body and entered into the police database. But there were no matches. Due to the poor condition of the body, more information could not be obtained. Therefore, the investigation for some time reached a dead end until 2016. When a DNA match was found in the police database, it belonged to Daniel Clay from Monroe County. His DNA was included in the database due to issues related to child support. Daniel had a troubled childhood. His mother was incarcerated shortly after his birth, and he was raised by foster parents in a local orphanage. He later developed a substance abuse problem after failing to secure stable employment. One of his former girlfriends became pregnant, but he denied paternity and did not provide child support. Daniel had a history of criminal behavior, harassment of women, and banned substance trafficking. Yet for some reason, his DNA had not been collected for the police database until now, on July 22, 2016. The police were driving the guy, who tried to escape but was caught. Daniel was taken in for questioning. Initially, he thought the police were investigating him for child support issues, but the detectives quickly shifted the focus to Chelsea's murder. He admitted to being at that Halloween party, but said he left early and denied having any connection to Chelsea. Claimed he had never seen her before, of course. The police officer did not believe him, as posters of Chelsea were displayed everywhere, making it impossible for Daniel not to know about her disappearance. However, he could not explain how his DNA ended up on the clothes and body of Chelsea. Investigators started using more sophisticated techniques to gather information. They employed a good cop, bad cop approach, which led to changes in the suspect's story. He admitted that he had forgotten some details, but he claimed that at a party, he had intimate with an unknown girl. He described her as wearing some kind of suit and said he didn't get a good look at her. The suspect mentioned that he got into a car with her, and after their encounter, they parted ways. However, this statement is obtained because he mistakenly believed that male fluids were found on the remains. In fact, the police did not locate any such fluid, but they did find his skin cells on Chelsea's remains, and on the straps of the poison ivy suit. His DNA was also discovered on the leggings, which were torn along the seam. This evidence suggested that the act was not consensual, and the police had not informed him about any intimate contact with the victim. Only a small group of investigators was aware of this information. Daniel eventually admitted to the crime after the suspect changed his story multiple times. Initially, he completely denied knowing Chelsea and claimed he had not been with anyone that night. However, during another interrogation, his account shifted again. This time, Daniel stated that he did intimate with a girl he met while leaving the parking lot. She got into his car and started flirting with him, although he initially responded to her advances. He soon became aggressive during their encounter. She asked him to bite, hit, and strangle her. He complied and strangled her for several seconds. Afterward, he realized she was unresponsive despite his attempts to revive her. She had no pulse. In shock and panic, Daniel drove for about half an hour along forest roads, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, he disposed of her body in a remote area near an abandoned site. He could not explain why her clothes were found far from the body. Overall, his story was seen as absurd and unbelievable. Leading no one to trust his account, Daniel created an elaborate web of lies that ultimately led the police to lose patience and charge him with the murder of Chelsea. He claimed her death was an accidental result of a moment of passion, insisting on his innocence until the end. However, the medical examiner contradicted his claims, stating that the actual cause of death was a blow to the head from a blunt object, exposing his entire narrative as false. Daniel's girlfriend testified in court, saying she had never seen any signs of cruelty in him and found it hard to believe he could commit such an act. Meanwhile, Another woman revealed that Daniel had confessed to her about the murder. The prosecutor argued that, on the night of the incident, Daniel spotted Chelsea walking alone and defenseless. He deceived her into getting into his car, then abuse, and brutally beat her to death. They was unable to clarify why the girl's suit and wig were found in one location. One shoe was found in another, and her body was discovered in yet another place. There were many unanswered questions in this case. But the key point is that Chelsea's body was recovered and the perpetrator was apprehended. To counter Daniel's false testimony, a special dummy was used to demonstrate how someone could be strangled for a few seconds right in front of the jury. It was shown that his claim was false because, in reality, it takes more than 3 minutes of pressure on the neck to cause death, which left a strong impact on the jury. Additionally, the prosecutor reiterated the injuries inflicted on Chelsea by Daniel. The brutality of the killer was evident in the manner in which he caused these injuries. It became clear that such a heinous act could not have been committed by chance. Daniel was found guilty of both abuse and murder, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 75 years for other acts of violence against women. Incredibly, Leanda surprisingly revealed in a media interview that she has forgiven her daughter's killer. She even gifted him a Bible, which he promised to keep. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case, the case of Daniel LaPlante. In 1986, Frank Bowen, with his two daughters, Tina Bowen and Karen Bowen, experienced a series of terrifying events at their home in Townsend, Massachusetts. The girls initially believed that the house was haunted when strange phenomena began to occur, such as furniture being shuffled, strange noises coming from the walls, and threatening words written on mirrors and walls in a red material that looked like blood. These events left the family in extreme fear. Frank Bowen initially thought that his daughters were imagining things or playing a prank, but all doubts disappeared when he was faced with the terrifying truth. The person behind these bizarre events was Daniel LaPlante, a 16-year-old boy who lived nearby. In addition to trying to scare the Bowen family, Daniel secretly lived in their house for about 2 months. Taking refuge in the walls and narrow spaces between rooms, Daniel used secret passageways in the house to spy on and manipulate the family. The truth was discovered when Mr. Frank found Daniel in the house, confronting him with a weapon in his hand. Police later determined that Daniel had cut holes in the walls to move around undetected, turning the Frank home into a hiding place. Daniel LaPlante, often referred to as Danny, was born on May 15, 1970, in Townsend, Massachusetts. He grew up with his parents and 2 brothers, but his childhood was far from happy. Daniel endured various forms of abuse from his father, including physical, emotional, and abuse. After cutting ties with his father, Daniel began living with another man, who also treated him cruelly. Their home was an unhealthy environment, filthy and cluttered with garbage, with a yard full of trash and stray animals roaming freely. This atmosphere contributed to Daniel's growing disillusionment with life. He became rebellious, and his teachers frequently complained about his behavior. What began as troubling behavior eventually escalated into self-destructive tendencies. Daniel struggled socially, performed poorly in school, and was described by his classmates as strange, unhygienic, and unpleasant. Most avoided him because of his appearance and behavior, concerned by his actions. The school referred Daniel to a psychiatrist for help. During their sessions, it was discovered that Daniel had dyslexia and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. While the psychiatrist initially appeared to want to help, he instead exploited Daniel's vulnerabilities. Over the course of a year, the psychiatrist coerced Daniel into an abuse relationship, further compounding the trauma he had already endured throughout his life. By 1986, as a teenager, desperate to escape his life of torment, Abuse began committing petty thefts in his neighbors' homes. Initially, he focused on stealing specific items, but over time, he shifted his focus to instilling fear in the residents. He started leaving cryptic, unsettling messages, rearranging household items to confuse the homeowners, and scattering crumbs and food stains throughout the houses. One of the homes he targeted belonged to the Bowen family. The Bowen family lived in Townsend, Massachusetts. In the same county as Daniel, the household consisted of Frank and his 2 daughters. The girl's mother had recently passed away from cancer, leaving the family grief-stricken and struggling to adjust to their drastically changed lives when Daniel broke into their home. He noticed the family portraits, which radiated a sense of closeness and warmth. This enraged Daniel, who felt deeply unhappy with his own life. To him, such a family seemed like an impossible dream. It was then that he devised a sinister plan. Toward the end of 1986, one evening, Tina Bowen received an anonymous call from a young man who introduced himself as Daniel LaPlante. When Tina asked how he had gotten her phone number, Daniel claimed he attended the same school as her and had obtained it through a mutual friend. Curious, Tina asked if they had met before, and Daniel provided a false description of himself to spark her interest. He claimed to have bright blonde hair, an athletic build, and said he lived in her neighborhood. During their conversations, which continued for about a week, Daniel was very polite and charming, successfully gaining Tina's trust. After much persuasion, Daniel convinced Tina to go on a date with him. He offered to pick her up from her home, and his imagined charm seemed to win her over. However, when the big evening arrived, Daniel made no effort to clean up his appearance when he showed up at the Bowen house and rang the doorbell. Tina immediately realized that everything he had claimed on the phone was untrue. As she opened the door, she saw that Daniel looked nothing like his description. His clothes were dirty, his physique was far from athletic, and his hair was dark instead of blonde. Despite her disappointment, Tina felt there might still be some trace of the charming man she had spoken with beneath it all. So, she decided to give him a chance. While they were walking together, Tina shared with Daniel that her mother had recently passed away from cancer. Instead of offering comfort, Daniel began asking her unsettling questions about her mother's appearance after death, what it was like to witness death up close, and the extent of her mother's suffering before she passed. The conversation was so unusual and inappropriate that it felt nothing like the casual evening chats Tina was used to. An hour into the date, Tina didn't leave, though she found the entire experience deeply strange and upsetting. She had never encountered someone so fixated on her mother's death, and Daniel's blunt, insensitive questions showed no regard for the pain she and her family had endured. This left she feeling profoundly sad. Tina later expressed her sadness to her younger sister, saying how much she missed their mother and how desperately she wished to speak with her again. One evening, while home alone, Tina and her sister decided to try contacting their mother's spirit using a Ouija board. They went down to the basement and, with little expectation that it would work, began the ritual. However, their efforts were unsuccessful when they heard their father returning from work. The sisters quickly hid the Ouija board and went back to their room. Later that night, just after midnight, Tina and Karen were startled awake by a series of knocks on their bedroom wall. Excited, the sisters believed it was their mother attempting to communicate with them. They felt their spiritualism session had not been in vain. When they asked directly if it was truly their mother, a loud knock sounded on the wall, which the girls took as a definite yes. For several nights, strange events continued to occur, but only Tina and Karen were aware of them. However, when they tried to show their father the supernatural activity, nothing happened. It all began with faint knocks on the walls, but soon objects started disappearing. Items left on the table were found scattered on the floor the next day. The girls noticed furniture moving on its own, and food and drinks vanishing mysteriously. These occurrences unsettled them, and they began doubting that it was their mother trying to communicate. After all, their mom wouldn't frighten them like this. When the girls explained everything to Frank, he dismissed their claims. He believed the so-called supernatural events were just the girls acting out. Frank assumed Tina and Karen were seeking attention and tried to remain patient, convinced they would eventually overcome their pain, however. As time went on, Tina and Karen became increasingly terrified of their own home. The knocks on the walls and other strange happenings were driving them to the brink. Still, Frank refused to believe Tina and Karen. In desperation, Tina decided to confront the spirit directly. Now, she's certain it wasn't their late mother. Tina grabbed a knife from the kitchen and, along with Karen, went down to the basement. On one of the walls, they found a message written in red letters, which they immediately assumed was blood. The message read, "I am in your room. Find me. Terrified." Tina and Karen ran to the neighbor's house, desperate to escape the torment they believed was caused by the spirit they had summoned. Tina and Karen anxiously waited for their father to return home from work. When Frank arrived, he immediately noticed the chaos upon seeing the message on the basement wall. He quickly realized it was written in tomato sauce. Furious, he lashed out at his daughters, scolding them for going too far and damaging their own home. He told them they needed a healthier way to deal with their pain, and even threatened to send Tina and Karen to a psychotherapist after this unsettling incident. Everything seemed to go back to normal. The supernatural events stopped, and the family began to relax. Life resumed its usual peaceful rhythm. The girls behaved calmly, and Frank continued his work as if nothing had happened. However, one day, a knock on the wall signaled the ghost's return. Tina and Karen, consumed by fear, returned to the basement, where all their troubles had begun. Suddenly, they heard another loud knock from upstairs. Panicked, they ran to Tina's bedroom, only to find a chilling message written in large red letters on the wall. "I'm back. Find me if you can." Tina grabbed her sister's hand, and they fled the house, seeking help from their neighbor, alarmed by the sister's story and their state. The neighbor promptly called Frank to inform him of what was happening. When Frank heard that his daughters were involved in another disturbing incident, he rushed home to address the situation. Convinced his daughters' actions were escalating, he decided to get to the bottom of it. Upon arriving at the neighbor's house, Frank questioned Tina and Karen about the events, shaking with fear. They said everything, including the unsettling message they had discovered, determined to put an end to their fears. Frank decided to go back to the house alone to investigate. As he stepped inside, Frank was met with chaos. The entire house was in disarray. Clothes and belongings were scattered across the floor. He immediately realized this mess was far beyond what his daughters could have caused. When he entered Tina's bedroom, he found the same disturbing message the girls had described earlier, and now an additional chilling note was scrawled beneath it. "Marry me, confused and uneasy." Frank felt something was terribly wrong. A shiver ran down his spine as he sensed a presence behind him. Turning around, his heart sank. In the corner of the room stood a young man. The man was dressed in Frank's late wife's wedding dress and a blonde wig, even more horrifying. He was holding an axe, though shaken to his core. Frank quickly realized one thing. This was no ghost. Frank chased the intruder until this man fled and disappeared from sight immediately afterward. He called the police. Investigators conducted a thorough search of the house and discovered a hidden space behind a closet in one of the rooms. Inside the wall, they found a small door leading to an underground cavity or passageway between the house's walls, large enough for someone to move through. When a police officer entered the hidden area, they found Daniel curled up in a ball in one corner. Daniel was arrested, with Frank identifies him as the man in the wedding dress who threatened Frank with an axe. Later, authorities uncovered more troubling details about the incident. Tina confided in her father about an unsettling date she had gone on with Daniel a few months earlier. Investigators determined that Daniel had used the hidden passageways to torment Tina and Karen inside the space. Police found a sleeping bag, clothing belonging to the family, and leftover food. The most disturbing discovery, however, was that the secret space connected to every room in the house. This allowed Daniel to move through the walls undetected, spy on the family, and communicate with the girls through the distinct knocking sounds that had terrified them at the time of his arrest. 16-year-old Daniel was sent to a juvenile facility when he turned 17. Court documents were filed to begin trying his case as an adult. He faced multiple charges, including robbery, burglary, and property damage in October 1987. Daniel was released on bail after his mother paid nearly $10 for his release after returning to his mother and stepfather's home. Daniel was instructed to stay out of trouble and await his court date on December 11, 1987. However, he ignored these instructions and resumed burglarizing nearby homes during one of these break-ins. He found a weapon, which he took with him in November. His stepfather discovered the weapon hidden in a laundry basket when confronted. Daniel lied and refused to reveal where he had obtained the weapon, although his stepfather confiscated it. It was unclear whether Daniel had access to another one on December 1, 1987. Daniel walked approximately 2 kilometers to reach the large, comfortable mansion of the Gustafson family. The family consisted of 33-year-old Priscilla, her husband Andrew, their 2 children, 7-year-old Abigail and 5-year-old William, and Priscilla is pregnant with their 3rd child. The Gustafson family were a close-knit family dedicated to helping others. Andrew worked as a lawyer and was often away from home, while Priscilla worked at a kindergarten, sang in a choir, and actively participated in their church. On that tragic day, when Daniel broke into their home, only Priscilla and William were there. At this time, Abigail was still at school. He overpowered Priscilla, dragged her into the bedroom, and assaulted her. Afterwards, he suffocated her with a pillow to muffle the sound, and then attacked her twice in the head. Once Priscilla was dead, Daniel turned his attention to William. He carried the boy to a filled bathtub on the 2nd floor and drowned him. Shortly after Abigail arrived home from school, Daniel immediately grabbed Abigail, took her to the bathtub on the 1st floor, and drowned her in it. Just like William, when Andrew arrived at the house around 6 p.m., he immediately sensed something was wrong. The children were not playing as they usually did, and his wife did not come to greet him in the hallway when he called out for Priscilla. There was no response. Concerned, Andrew went to the bedroom, where he discovered a horrifying scene. Priscilla was lying lifeless in an unnatural position, with bloodstains all around, in shock. Andrew called the police right away. He could not even search the house to find the children when the investigators arrived. They found Andrew in such a state of shock that he was unable to think clearly during their search of the house. The police discovered the bodies of the children. Among the evidence collected were 2 spent cartridges from a weapon, strands of the attacker's hair on the bed and on Priscilla's body, an open beer can, and shoe prints near the entrance. Suspicion quickly fell on Daniel, a recently paroled young man who lived near the Gustafson home. He was known for his skill in breaking into nearby houses, which made him a prime suspect. While investigators were searching for him, Daniel was at the city library when questioned about his whereabouts on December 1. He claimed he had been at a family birthday party. He denied any involvement in the case of the Gustafson family and expressed sorrow over what had occurred. The police initially appeared to believe his story, but later, they visited Daniel's home with additional questions and a search warrant. When Daniel was sitting on the porch, spotted the police car. He immediately realized they were there for him, so he fled and hid in the woods. Daniel's actions confirmed the investigators' suspicions were right, and them to search Daniel's house inside. They discovered several shoe soles that matched the footprints found near the Gustafson home. They also found fibers that appeared to be connected to the crime. A sock with saliva stains likely used to gag Priscilla, a .22 caliber shell casing similar to one found at the crime scene, and a cordless phone stolen from the Gustafson home. Additionally, the Daniel family's car was examined, they revealing weapon in the glove compartment. Police quickly called for reinforcements to search for Daniel, the main suspect in the case of the Gustafson family. Over 50 officers participated in the search. Aided by helicopters and sniffer dogs that thoroughly combed the forest, a crucial tip came from an emergency call. The caller revealed that Daniel had threatened her with a gun and forced her to drive him away in her truck. Thankfully, she managed to escape. This information helped investigators identify the model of the car Daniel used to flee on the run. He committed several additional robberies, leaving witnesses at the scenes who later reported him to the police. Daniel LaPlante was arrested on December 3, 1987, at 6:03 p.m. while trying to hide behind a garbage can in Ayers Town at the time of his arrest. He was armed and had committed several crimes while evading capture. Daniel's trial began in October 1988, when he was 18 years old, although most of his crimes occurred when he was a minor. The judge decided to try him as an adult. Daniel pleaded not guilty. Despite strong evidence against him, Daniel's defense claimed he was mentally unfit to stand trial, but a psychiatric evaluation determined that he could understand right from wrong and was fit for trial. The jury found Daniel LaPlante guilty of murdering the Gustafson family and sentenced him to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole in 1993. Daniel attempted to appeal his sentence, arguing that the search warrant for his home was issued improperly, but he was unsuccessful. In 2000, Daniel requested a transfer to another prison due to safety concerns after receiving threats from fellow inmates, and this request was approved. Then, in 2013, Daniel expressed dissatisfaction with not being allowed to practice his religion freely because his rituals would have required ingredients like blood and banned substance. In 2017, Daniel submitted a petition seeking a reduced sentence, claiming he was under 18 when he committed the crimes, so he should not be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He aimed to serve just 1 life sentence instead of 3 consecutive ones. However, his request was denied because he was required to serve time for each life he had ruined. His statement to the judge was as follows: "I cannot adequately express the weight of my actions. I have taken the lives of 3 innocent people because of my choices. A 5-year-old boy will never celebrate his 6th birthday, and 7-year-old girls will never turn 8. Their mother will not have a 3rd child, and I have robbed an unborn baby of its first breath. This woman may never hear the words, 'I love you' again to my family. I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused. My remorse is profound and heartfelt." In 2019, Daniel LaPlante applied for parole again, but the authorities was decided that his request would not be reviewed until 2032. Many believe that Daniel lacks the capacity for remorse or any genuine feelings, and they see him as someone who is capable of psychological torment and brutal killings. This raises concerns that if he is released, he may seek out new victims. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case, the case of Carla Faye Tucker. The events began on the morning of June 13, 1983, when the Texas Police Department responded to an urgent call from a man. Officers were dispatched to a house in the northeastern part of the city. Inside, they discovered the bodies of a man and a woman who had been brutally killed with a pickaxe. Initially, investigators suspected the murders were the result of a robbery gone wrong, but the sheer savagery of the crime made this theory unlikely. Once the victims' identities were confirmed and their backgrounds investigated, new revelations emerged that drastically changed the direction of the case. Houston, Texas, with a population of over 1 million, is the largest city in the region and the hub of Harris County. It is home to people of various religions and cultural backgrounds who live together in this diverse community. However, as the population grows, so does the crime rate, and Houston is now ranked among the top 100 most dangerous cities in America. On the morning of June 13, 1983, a man waited for his colleague, Jerry Lynn Dean, to pick him up for work. Jerry, however, never arrived. They had recently signed a contract for a security system installation job, and he knew Jerry was not the type to miss work without a good reason, since they lived close to each other. He decided to check on Jerry after waiting for some time, assuming his colleague might have overslept. When Gregory reached Jerry's apartment, he noticed the door was slightly open. He stepped inside and called out for Jerry, but received no response. He found the TV and the sound system were tangled together, and Jerry's motorcycle, which Jerry had been working on, was gone. Concerned, he began searching all over the apartment. Eventually, he opened the door to the guest bedroom. Little did he know that he was about to discover something horrifying. Jerry was found lying on the floor next to the bed, surrounded by a pool of blood. On the bed was a woman unfamiliar to he, with a pickaxe lodged in her chest. Horrified by the gruesome scene, he fled the apartment and went straight home to call the police. When the police arrived at the apartment, they observed that the space was in disarray, with tools, motorcycle parts, and dirty clothes scattered across the floor in the guest bedroom. They discovered the bodies of Jerry and the unknown woman. The officers documented the crime scene, including the pickaxe, which was identified as the murder weapon. One officer removed the pickaxe from the woman's chest and placed it aside for collection as evidence. The bodies were sent to the Harris County Medical Examiner's office for autopsy. During questioning, the colleague said to the investigators that the apartment door had been open when he arrived, and the interior looked as though someone had ransacked it. He also noticed that Jerry's motorcycle and blue Chevrolet El Camino pickup truck were missing. A search of the apartment revealed that both victims' wallets had also disappeared. Additionally, investigators discovered that the bird hammer used in the attack was taken from Jerry's toolkit. The detectives found no evidence of forced entry into the apartment. Neighbors mentioned hearing loud noises from the apartment early in the morning, but did not call the police, as they neither heard cries for help nor explosion and assumed nothing serious had occurred. Investigators theorized that the perpetrator was either someone the victims knew and willingly let in, or someone who entered through a door that was accidentally unlocked. Meanwhile, the severity of the attack pointed to the possibility of a premeditated murder. The autopsy revealed that Jerry sustained 28 pickaxe wounds, a head injury caused by a blunt object striking the back of his skull through fingerprints. The police identified Deborah Ruth Thornton as the second victim. She suffered 15 pickaxe wounds to her head and chest, with a fatal strike piercing her heart. After ruling out random theft, investigators turned their attention to the victim's close contacts. Jerry had met Deborah just the day before at a pool party. This was the first time they had met. Friends at the party stated that Deborah had attended to relax and escape her personal problems. Further inquiries revealed that Deborah was married and had 2 children. So, suspicion first fell on her husband. The husband was questioned and told investigators that on the evening of June 12, he had been at home with his children. He acknowledged that he and his wife had been having misunderstandings recently, but insisted he loved her and would never harm her. He claimed to know nothing about Deborah's infidelity and said he had never heard of a man named Jerry before. Investigators confirmed the husband's alibi and ruled him out as a suspect. Afterward, they learn of another person who may have held a grudge: Deborah's father, William. William had a criminal past, including a conviction for assault, for which he had served time. He currently owned a large business in Texas, but was under investigation for tax evasion. Further investigation revealed that Deborah had once been called to testify in court against her father, which could have provided a motive for murder. William was questioned, but he denied any involvement in the crime. Investigators kept him under surveillance for several weeks, but found no evidence connecting him to the double murder. Another team of investigators began looking into Jerry's past, uncovering that he, too, was surrounded by complex relationships. Jerry worked as a mechanic, and among those who knew him, a woman named Carla Faye Tucker. Carla, known for her love of partying, had a strained relationship with Jerry. The tension started when Carla first met Jerry, the boyfriend of Sean. From the start, she had a poor impression of him. She thought he was weak and unsuitable for her best friend. Their conflict escalated after an incident at Carla's apartment. Jerry had parked his motorcycle in her living room, and oil leaked from the bike, staining her carpet. Furious, Carla eventually kicked Jerry out of her apartment that night. In the months that followed, their animosity deepened. One day, when Carla and Sean planned a trip to see their favorite bands, Jerry became very upset. He found Carla's photo album and cut out all her pictures, including the only photo she had with her mother. This act infuriated Carla, and she tried to persuade Sean to end her relationship with Jerry. However, instead of separating, Sean and Jerry moved in together and got married. Despite everything, Carla remained convinced that her friend had made a mistake by choosing Jerry. A month after the wedding, Sean visited Carla's house to collect a jacket. During the visit, Carla mentioned that she no longer wanted to see Jerry. Upon hearing that Jerry had parked outside near her house, Carla stormed outside, confronted him, hit him in the face, and broke his glasses. This incident led to Jerry being taken to the hospital to remove glass fragments from his eye. In June of the same year, Sean and Jerry separated, citing accusations of domestic violence and clashing lifestyles. In retaliation for the alleged abuse she claimed to have suffered, Sean withdrew a large sum of money from Jerry's account and went shopping with Carla. After hearing this, Jerry allegedly began plotting his revenge. Rumors circulated that he had hired someone to attack Carla, intending to disfigure her. Their volatile relationship quickly attracted the attention of investigators. Carla was born on November 18, 1959, in Houston, Texas. To Larry and Carolyn, she had two much older sisters who were said to have negatively influenced her. This influence contributed to Carla starting to smoke at just 8 years old. When she was 10, her parents divorced, and she discovered that Larry was not her biological father. By the age of 12, Carla had begun use with banned substance and lived loosely with men. At 14, she dropped out of school and, following her mother's example, started working as an escort. Carolyn even taught Carla how to use her body to earn money. Around this time, Carla's sister introduced her to men who frequented biker clubs. Carla and her mother also became passionate fans of rock music and began traveling with music groups, embracing a carefree and unconventional lifestyle. Carla adapted quickly to this new way of living. At 16, she met Stephen Griffith, a laborer, and the two planned to marry. However, Carla found married life overwhelming. They frequently argued, and their fights often turned physical. Stephen even told his friends that Carla could hit harder than any man he knew. After 2 years of constant conflict, they decided to separate, and Carla returned to her previous lifestyle. When Carla was 20, Carolyn passed away. By that time, Carla had returned to spending time in biker clubs. It was during this period that she became close friends with Sean Dean. Their bond grew strong. The detectives questioned Carla. She admitted to having disagreements with Jerry, but denied any involvement in the crime. Carla allowed the police to take her fingerprints and initially agreed to a polygraph test, but later refused it after her boyfriend advised against it. The fingerprints provided no useful leads, as experts couldn't find viable evidence at the crime scene or on the murder weapon. However, Carla's sudden refusal to take a lie detector test made the detectives even more suspicious of her. Even so, this was not enough to add Carla or Sean to the list of suspects. Detectives continued visiting them regularly, hoping one of them would slip up. Carla appeared completely unbothered and carried on with her life, attending parties as usual. Weeks passed, and detectives still could not find any evidence linking of them. A detective from the homicide department took an interest in the case after hearing the name Daniel Ryan Garrett. Carla's boyfriend, the detective, had grown up in the same neighborhood as Daniel and also acquainted with Daniel's ex-wife. The detective contacted Daniel's ex-wife and asked if she had any information about Daniel or Carla's potential involvement in the Houston double murder. She confessed that she had not seen her ex-husband for a long time and expressed a desire to talk to him about it. On July 18, 1983, The Houston Police Department received an urgent call, judging by the voice on the other end of the line. The caller sounded extremely nervous. He demanded to speak specifically to this detective. It was Daniel's brother, and he claimed to have information about the murder. Daniel's brother confessed that he had kept this information a secret for 5 weeks. He also mentioned a third individual, James Leibrandt, a friend of his, who was present at Jerry's house on the night of the incident. He warned that the situation was escalating because Carla had been talking about killing one of the witnesses to silence them during his interrogation. He said that early in the morning of June 13, Daniel and Carla arrived at his house in a blue pickup truck. Carla bragged that she had taken care of Jerry and an unidentified woman, and both of them asked him to help destroy the evidence. Initially, he hesitated to get involved, but ultimately decided to assist. He burned Jerry's wallet in an ashtray, and the stolen motorcycle parts were dumped into a nearby ditch. On July 20, 1983, Daniel's brother rode a motorcycle to Carla's house with a transmitter hidden under his shirt and a recorder concealed in his shoe. The detective and the investigative team listened from a surveillance van parked a block away. Daniel's brother casually started the conversation, carefully guiding it toward the topic of the killing. Ultimately, the suspect, Carla, provided a detailed account of what happened on the night of June 12. Carla had organized a birthday party for her sister. The celebration lasted the entire weekend, with friends coming and going, drinking alcohol, and using banned substance, which were plentiful in the house by Sunday evening, when only James, Daniel, and Carla remained. She told Daniel that she felt overwhelmed with emotions and energy. The three of them began discussing a planned crime, and Carla suggested stealing Jerry's motorbike and selling it for parts to make money. She expressed her deep hatred for Jerry and said she wanted to make him pay for everything he had done to her and Sean. Around 3 a.m., they went to Jerry's house. They entered without any trouble because Carla had stolen an extra set of keys several weeks earlier. At the time, she didn't know why she had taken the keys, but they ended up being crucial on the night of the murder. During a recorded conversation, Daniel's brother asked if they had planned to kill anyone when they entered the house. Carla replied no, explaining that everything had happened spontaneously at the time. Carla was intoxicated and under the influence of banned substance. She sat on top of Jerry as he woke up. Trying to restrain him, Jerry attempted to free himself by grabbing her hands, but at that moment, Daniel struck him multiple times in the head with a hammer while in her drunken and drugged state. Carla became irritated by the gurgling sounds Jerry, who was dying, was making in a fit of rage. She grabbed a pickaxe and struck his body with it. Carla later admitted that using the flat side of the pickaxe gave her a feeling of arousal. Daniel struck the final, deadly blow to Jerry's head with the hammer and then left the room. At that moment, Carla noticed a woman hidden under a blanket in the corner of the bed. Up to that point, she had been so focused on Jerry that she hadn't realized someone else was there. Carla and the woman began to struggle. Their fight continued until Daniel returned, overcome by rage. Carla attacked the woman repeatedly with the pickaxe, eventually driving it straight into her heart. Daniel was arrested just a block from his home while heading to work. At the same time, armed police officers entered Carla's house to take her into custody. James Leibrandt, who was visiting Carla as a guest, was also arrested at the police station. All of Carla's friends were questioned. They shared what they knew, providing consistent accounts, and all noted that Carla had always disliked Jerry. However, both Carla and Daniel remained silent during questioning. Carla claimed she had been drugged and could not remember anything about that night during the investigation. Leibrandt cooperated with authorities and testified against Carla and Daniel. He claimed that after using the banned substance, he felt restless and needed something to relieve himself, leading to his involvement in the theft scheme ultimately resulted in Leibrandt receiving a light sentence. Carla and Daniel were charged with the murders of Jerry and Deborah, Both were held in Harris County Jail without bail. In September 1983, they appeared in court, but their trials were held separately. Carla faced charges for both murders, while Daniel, after testifying at a hearing, had the charge for Deborah's murder dropped. Carla pleaded not guilty and remained in jail, awaiting her trial. During her detention, jail staff reported that Carla behaved defiantly and provocatively. Everything changed, however, while awaiting trial. She began to recover from the effects of alcohol and banned substance. She started reading books from the prison library and, for the first time in her life, picked up a Bible. Later, Carla admitted to her cellmates and the staff that it was during this time she began to understand the consequences of her actions. She started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, where she met others whose lives had been destroyed by these toxic things. Inspired by their stories, Carla created her own Bible study group and resolved to become a better person. When Carla repented, she realized that the Lord forgives those who are lost. She came to believe that holding on to guilt and failing to seek forgiveness blocks one's connection to God and fills life with bitterness. Feeling forgiven by the Lord, Carla's heart became filled with love, which she believed should guide her life. In 1984, Carla stood trial for the murder of Jerry and Deborah. She explained that, at the time of the crime, she was heavily under the influence of banned substance and alcohol. Carla said that the murder was not planned, but occurred as a sudden outburst of anger during a robbery. Fueled by the substances she had consumed, several witnesses for the defense supported her lawyers, arguing that Carla and Daniel, on that night, were unable to distinguish right from wrong. However, the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on her guilt. Carla was given the chance to testify on her own behalf before the judge made the final decision. She spoke for nearly 5 hours, sharing details about her past and stating that only after being imprisoned did she fully understand her actions. Despite her emotional testimony, Carla was ultimately sentenced to death by lethal injection, becoming the only woman in Texas to receive this punishment. In November 1984, Carla testified at Daniel's trial, hoping he would not be convicted. However, he was also sentenced to death. That marked the last time Carla and Daniel saw each other, while the legal system labeled Carla a murderer. Many saw her as a symbol of reform, initially resigned to her fate of dying by lethal injection. Carla's outlook changed in 1993 when she learned that Daniel, who was awaiting execution, had died of liver disease. This motivated her to fight for her own life with the support of a prison chaplain. She began the process of appealing her case. Carla appealed to have her death sentence reduced to life imprisonment. Her request gained support from notable figures, including Pope John Paul II, the Prime Minister of Italy, Romano Prodi, U.S. House Speaker Newt Gingrich, and televangelist Pat Robertson. Surprisingly, Ronald Carlson, the brother of the victims, Deborah, also supported clemency after witnessing Carla's transformation during her time in prison. Even Hans, the warden of the Huntsville's prison, testified that Carla had been an exemplary inmate. The decision now rested with the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles, which was responsible for recommending whether her death sentence should be commuted. However, the final authority belonged to Governor Texas George W. Bush. On January 28, 1998, the board rejected Carla's request. In response, she wrote a letter to Governor Bush, acknowledging her actions as acts of extreme cruelty and recounting her journey of transformation. Despite her plea, the governor denied her final appeal just hours before her execution, refusing to commute her death sentence to life imprisonment. On February 2, 1998, Carla requested a peach, a banana, and a salad with dressing as her last meal, according to prison authorities. She spent the morning with her family from 8 a.m. to noon. While many hoped her final hours would remain peaceful, others anticipated that the day would be emotionally difficult for all involved until the very end. People awaited the governor's decision. Would he grant her mercy On February 3, 1998, Carla Tucker was executed by lethal injection in Texas. She had requested the presence of her sister, Kari Weeks, and some friends during her final moments at 6:45 p.m., 8 minutes after the injection. She was pronounced dead. Carla was the first woman to be executed in Texas in 135 years since the reinstatement of the death penalty. Carla was buried at Forest Park, Lawndale Cemetery in Houston later. Accusations arose against Governor Bush, alleging that he lacked compassion for Carla during the appeals process. In response, Bush issued a statement expressing that he had forgiven her, but emphasized that justice still needed to be served for the 2 lives she had taken. Carla inspired the creation of several fictional characters in stories that explored her troubled upbringing and how it eventually led to her crimes. Fred Allen, the execution team's captain, revealed that overseeing Carla's execution caused him deep emotional turmoil. He later resigned from his role in the Texas prison system and became a vocal critic of the death penalty. Allen argued that no one has the moral right to take another person's life, even if it is sanctioned by the law. He also shared that when Carla was brought in, he realized she was the first woman scheduled for execution, and he vividly remembered the details of that day. Carla looked at him and said, "Thank you, Allen, for everything you are doing." Allen replied, "You're welcome," and fastened the safety strap. Other members of the team carried out the necessary procedures, and everything proceeded as expected. When Carla was pronounced dead, Allen and the others placed her body on the stretcher, removed the straps, and went about their usual tasks. However, shortly afterward, Allen suddenly imagined the pain Carla must have felt. He broke into a cold sweat, began trembling, and burst into tears. It was a deeply shocking experience for him. The changes Carla underwent in prison profoundly affected many who had initially seen her as nothing more than an antisocial individual. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case, the case of Saga Elneborg. Saga Elneborg was a 20-year-old girl who was 7 months pregnant at the time. She was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Mohammedaman Dirisek Ibrahim, the father of her child. They had been together for about 2 years and were expecting a baby boy. With doctors confirming that the pregnancy was progressing well, Saga was eagerly looking forward to becoming a mother in just a few weeks and had carefully prepared for the birth of her child during this time. She shared pictures of her growing belly and many items she had bought for her future child on social media. She was especially fond of posting pictures of children's clothes. On April 28, 2023, Saga had scheduled a meeting with her boyfriend, Mohammed Amin, to discuss their relationship. That day, she informed her mother that Mohammed Amin was planning to visit her home, so Melissa decided not to interrupt their conversation. Saga's family was very cautious about her relationship with someone from a different culture, especially since they knew that challenges could arise when meeting Mohammed Amin's family from Somalia. At that time, Mohammed Amin was standing outside Saga's apartment door when he entered the house. Saga began to share some of the problems they were having in their relationship. Saga still loved Mohammed Amin and wanted their relationship to succeed. However, she felt uncomfortable when he often hid her from his parents, which caused conflicts between them. On April 29, 2023, at around 1 p.m., Saga's mother, Melissa, came to her daughter's apartment to support her and help gather her belongings in preparation for the arrival of her grandson. When Melissa arrived at the apartment, she was talking on the phone with her other daughter. She rang the doorbell several times, but no one answered, which surprised her. She knocked on the door, used the intercom, and even called Saga's phone and sent a text message. What puzzled she was that there was still no response from Saga. She thought that her daughter might have forgotten about her visit and gone out to run an errand. Although Melissa had a spare key, she noticed that the door was unlocked as she approached, which seemed very suspicious. Saga was always careful to lock the door. Even when she stepped out for a moment to get the mail or do the laundry, there was no way she would leave the door open. When she entered the apartment, Melissa heard the sound of running water in the kitchen. So she rushed in to turn it off. She called out to her daughter, but there was no answer. When Melissa entered her daughter's bedroom, she found the lights off, and the darkness made her feel uneasy. When Melissa turned on the light, she was horrified to see her daughter lying on the floor. Saga was there. With a light cord wrapped around her neck, the scene was even more terrifying because a heavy table had fallen over. Melissa rushed to her daughter's side, pushed the table aside, and carefully removed the cord from her neck. She then called emergency services while attempting to give her daughter first aid. The first thing she noticed was that Saga's body was stiff and very cold, indicating that she had been dead for a considerable amount of time. Paramedics arrived quickly, but unfortunately, both Saga and her unborn child were dead. The police who arrived began an investigation and noted that she had suffered head and facial injuries. The crime scene was covered in dried blood, and jewelry boxes were found upside down on the floor. There were no signs of forced entry, but the police initially considered that she had taken her own life. However, after reviewing data from Saga's cell phone, they concluded that she could not have ended her life by herself. Saga had no mental health problems. She was cheerful and lively. Especially during her pregnancy, she was eagerly awaiting the birth of her child and could never have harmed herself or her baby. Forensic experts collected a significant amount of evidence at the crime scene, including fingerprints, blood, and DNA from under Saga's fingernails and from her belongings for analysis. The forensic expert concluded that Saga died of strangulation, with an estimated time of death between 1 and 3 in the morning. On the forensic expert's desk were not only Saga's body, but also the body of her newborn baby. Weighing 1.7 kg, tests showed that the baby was completely healthy. This was a devastating shock to Saga's mother, family, and friends. The police quickly launched an investigation into the messages from Saga's relatives. The first person they spoke to was her mother, Melissa. She explained that on April 28, her daughter had planned to meet some friends at a local restaurant. Melissa noticed that her daughter seemed very anxious and was checking her phone frequently. Saga said that she did not want to miss a message from her boyfriend, Mohammed Amin. Melissa revealed that he had already informed his parents about Saga. However, before that, Mohammed Amin had been extremely anxious and nearly had a nervous breakdown because he feared that his parents would not approve of his relationship with Saga. His parents are Muslims with strict conservative beliefs. In contrast, Saga is a Swedish citizen with Thai and European heritage, and she holds more modern views. Mohammed Amin and his family are refugees. His parents brought him to Europe when he was a child. Although he grew up in Europe and embraced modernity, he still valued his family's traditions. Another important issue was the difference in religion. Mohammed Amin's family was Muslim, while Saga's relatives were Christian. This difference in beliefs and traditions often led to conflict, straining their relationship. After dining at the restaurant, Saga said goodbye to her mother and friends, who wished her well, not knowing that it would be the last time they would see her alive. Tragically, after returning home, Saga was murdered. Police suspect that Mohammed Amin may have informed his family about his relationship with Saga, which may have provoked their violent reaction and ultimately led to the tragedy. During the initial stages of the investigation, the police looked into whether Mohammed Amin's relatives were involved in the murder. His mother had raised suspicions when she left home late at night. However, it was later confirmed that she had only gone to the shop and returned after about 15 minutes. There was no evidence that his relatives were involved in the case. The police also discovered that one day, Mohammed Amin's mother found the car he was using parked near Saga's house. At that time, His mother suspected he was having a romantic relationship with a Christian woman. After discovering this, Mohammed Amin's mother was furious. She informed him that he was no longer welcome in their home. She felt that if he did not respect their traditions, it would be easier to cut ties with him. In his defense, Mohammed Amin claimed that he had never visited those people and that he had convinced her of that. However, according to Melissa, their relationship had deteriorated since Saga became pregnant. It was rumored that Mohammed Amin wanted her to have an abortion because he was afraid of his family's reaction. Despite this pressure, Saga decided to continue with the pregnancy and give birth. She said that if necessary, she could raise the child herself. In October, Saga shared the news of her pregnancy with her family, and everyone was very happy at that time. Her relationship with her boyfriend was not good, as they often had conflicts due to cultural differences, which made communication difficult. Saga felt that if Mohammed Amin did not change his views, it would be difficult for them to connect. However, a few months later, things seemed to improve. He began to adapt to her lifestyle and accepted the pregnancy. Appearing happy to be a father, Saga then moved into a larger apartment with a nursery, which she began to decorate. By March 2023, they were still together, but there were some troubling signs in their relationship. A friend confided in Saga that Mohammed Amin had tried to convince her that she needed to kick Saga in the stomach multiple times to induce a miscarriage. Saga was furious when she learned about this, but Mohammed Amin insisted that it was all a fabrication. Melissa knew about these disturbing events, but did not want to accept them as true. However, now that her daughter was dead, it was clear that Mohammed Amin's intention to harm Saga was real. The police began to piece together a timeline of events and soon discovered that Mohammed Amin and Saga had planned to spend that evening together. However, he seemed to be avoiding Saga, intentionally staying late at work to avoid seeing her that evening. Saga spoke to him. She told Mohammed Amin that he needed to tell his family about their relationship, the move, and her pregnancy, or they would break up. On April 28, Saga was waiting to hear from him, according to Melissa. Her daughter seemed quite anxious during this time. The police reviewed cell phone records and confirmed that Saga had been in contact with Mohammed Amin until 11 p.m. on April 28. He had said that he would not inform his parents about Saga and their relationship, stating that his family was more important than having an illegitimate child. Saga felt disappointed with his decision and tried to convince him to reconsider. She argued that if they broke up, his family would eventually find out about the child because she had planned to seek financial support from him. After discussing their situation, Mohammed Amin agreed to tell his family about Saga and the baby. He expressed his anxiety, saying that he felt like his heart was going to burst. This was the last message he sent her before she was killed. Police believe that Saga's determination to reveal the truth and her ability to tell his parents herself motivated Mohammed Amin to attack the girl. He remains the only suspect in the case. Mohammed Amin was brought in for questioning. He claimed he had nothing to do with the incident and stated that on the night of the murder, he had returned home to confess to his parents about his relationship with Saga. However, geolocation data showed that this was not true. Mohammed Amin had, in fact, gone to his girlfriend's apartment when told that he was the prime suspect in Saga's murder. Mohammed Amin became defensive. He insisted he was innocent and had an alibi, claiming that he was driving with a friend at the time of Saga's murder. However, the friend was on the phone with someone else and refused to testify, despite his alibi failing. Mohammed Amin maintained that he last saw Saga on the evening of April 27. Mohammed Amin stated that he had confessed their relationship to his parents. However, the police discovered that he had never spent a full night at her new apartment, as he was afraid his family would find out. Due to Mohammed Amin's suspicious behavior, the police decided to arrest him and keep him in custody While they continued their investigation, he was detained for several months. Eventually, the prosecution gathered strong evidence against him, claiming it was sufficient to ensure victory in court. The investigation even involved specially trained dogs, which helped identify some of the evidence. Muhammad Amin's lawyer argued that the dogs' findings should not be the main basis of the case, as they were not a reliable source of information. However, there was still much more evidence against him. DNA analysis and a review of the evidence took quite a while, but eventually confirmed the truth of the case. Muhammad Amin wrapped an electric cord around Saga's neck while she was sleeping on the sofa. He then dragged Saga to the floor and attempted to push her onto her stomach in an effort to force her to terminate the pregnancy. Despite her best efforts to protect her child, Saga sustained injuries to her hip. Muhammad Amin then attempted to strangle Saga, pressing the edge of the table against her throat. Exhausted and unable to lift the heavy object, Saga suffocated. When she died, the table was still pressed against her throat, leaving a deep dent after committing the crime. Muhammad Amin tried to make it look like a robbery by throwing some boxes around. The defense argued that Saga was the victim of real robbers who stole money and various household items. However, the prosecutor believed that Muhammad Amin's actions only added to his guilt. Several missing items were later discovered during a search of his home. He claimed that these items were either his or gifts from his girlfriend. A key piece of evidence against him was his DNA found under Saga's fingernails. In addition, a forensic expert determined that Saga had been abused before her death. Muhammad Amin claimed that the act was consensual and had occurred a few days before her death. However, the prosecution cast doubt on his testimony, highlighting inconsistencies and lies in his statements during interrogation. Police found multiple traces of his DNA in Saga's apartment. The investigation revealed some disturbing searches by Muhammad Amin. Notably, he searched whether kicking a mother in the stomach could harm her unborn child. The prosecutor's office believes that instead of visiting his family, Muhammad Amin went to Saga's apartment. He never intended to tell his family about her for fear of their reaction, but Saga pressured him with her demands. In response, he killed her. Motivated by fear of his parents, the defense argued that the DNA found under Saga's fingernails could have been there long before the murder. However, Melissa, Saga's mother, insisted that her daughter was very clean and had showered shortly before her death. She knew this, especially during Saga's pregnancy. As her daughter was meticulous about her personal hygiene, it is clear that Saga had showered and changed into clean clothes, meaning that the DNA evidence found on her body and belongings was still fresh and must have been left behind during the attack. Curiously, after Saga's death, Muhammad Amin quickly deleted her from Snapchat and removed his social media accounts. The police found that he was trying to hide his connection to the crime. Fortunately, the deleted data was easily recovered and added to the evidence against him. Although there was no direct evidence, Muhammad Amin's behavior clearly showed that he was indifferent to his girlfriend, Saga. During the investigation, it was noted that he was a short distance from her apartment while continuing to communicate with her from afar. He neither approached nor left, as if he were waiting for something. It is possible that during this time, he was trying to muster the courage to attack or wanted to ensure that Saga was asleep. At 2 a.m., Muhammad Amin's cell phone signal went off. He then turned on his phone to try to contact his friend, but his call was ignored. An active call signal from him was detected in the same residential area where Saga lived. This evidence helped the police uncover another lie by Muhammad Amin. He claimed that during this time, he was at home with his parents. However, Muhammad Amin's cell phone only became active at 2:16 a.m., which matched the forensic expert's conclusion about the time of death of Saga and her child. Muhammad Amin's story kept changing. At one point, he fabricated a story about a gang of robbers. He claimed to have hidden a bag of money in Saga's home, but he never explained where he obtained the large sum, according to Muhammad Amin. The robbers broke into Saga's home to steal the cash. Saga tried to stop the robbers, which ultimately led to her murder. The prosecutor's office rejected this idea. As there were no signs of forced entry at the crime scene, it was clear that Saga had either let the killer into her home willingly or that he had a key to her apartment. Muhammad Amin had a motive for the crime during his 9 months in prison. He never confessed and steadfastly denied any involvement, however. The prosecutor's office gathered a significant amount of evidence, both direct and indirect, to support their case. Although he did not admit to the crime, he expressed fear about telling his family about Saga. He claimed to love her and even the child, but he believed his conservative parents would disown him for dating a European girl. After hearing arguments from both the prosecution and the defense, the jury deliberated on the verdict on June 9, 2024. They unanimously found Mohammed Amin Abdirisek Ibrahim guilty of the premeditated murder of Saga Elnaborg, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Despite this, he maintained that he loved both Saga and his unborn child. Claiming that he never intended to harm them, he insisted that violence was not part of his character and that this was the first crime he had ever committed. The investigation revealed that Muhammad Amin had been seeing other women regularly during the 2 years of his relationship with Saga, although he denied any extramarital affairs. Evidence showed that he had numerous meetings with different girls, some of which became intimate. This information further tarnished his reputation. His defense attorney, meanwhile, argued that Muhammad Amin was innocent and that Saga had been the victim of an attempted robbery. The attorney promised to fight for his freedom and intended to appeal the jury's decision. An appeal was filed shortly after the decision was announced, but the final outcome remains unclear. Although Muhammad Amin was charged with Saga's murder, he was never charged in connection with the death of his unborn child, which angered Saga's family. The investigation attracted considerable public and media attention. The tragedy once again highlighted issues surrounding migrants, especially those from Muslim countries, who have been arriving in Sweden more frequently in recent years. Many people have noted that these migrants struggle to integrate into European society and often refuse to accept individuals from different cultures. A violent murder arising from cultural and religious differences sparked public outrage and prompted calls for government action. Some defended Mohammed Amin, claiming he was innocent. His family argued that he had no violent tendencies, and many believed in his innocence, offering him strong support. According to relatives, Mohammed Amin was not ready to be a father, but he maintained that he loved his girlfriend and son, even after their tragic deaths.